Chapter 1888. The fist, which was as huge as a palace, heavily hit the black dragon's head. The storm-like intensive punches had been going on for a long time, and the golden-armored general finally stopped. At this time, the black dragon was completely paralyzed on the ground, vomiting blood nonstop. Moreover, its eyes were no longer fierce, as if it was on the verge of death. However, the golden-armored general did not stop. He took the golden sword, raised it, and without any hesitation, directly stabbed the golden sword into the black dragon's body. The originally dying black dragon instantly let out a mournful cry. The blood that spurted out from its wound was actually like a waterspout that shot straight up and then down. The palace that had turned into ruins was now raining blood. The rain fell on the broken floor, and wisps of green smoke rose. The entire surface was eroded into countless spots in a moment. After a crazy struggle, the black dragon finally dropped its limbs, completely motionless. Its eyes kept enlarging, and finally bloody tears flowed out. The golden-armored general was still holding the golden sword that stabbed the black dragon. At this moment, it was as if they had turned into two gigantic statues. Time also seemed to have stopped at this moment, and the surroundings were dead silent. The man of peace between man and nature seemed to be able to hear his own heartbeat. The bloody rain fell, but it was naturally driven away by his power. Humans defeated the dragon race, finally. He murmured, "Victory! No, not yet." Sword Saintly Yuluo suddenly shouted in a deep voice. At this moment, the pitch-black night sky of the royal capital suddenly turned a dark red color. Terrifying, blood-colored, demonic clouds stretched out endlessly, and a gigantic whirlpool appeared in the blood-colored sky that resembled a churning sea of blood. In the depths of the whirlpool, a pair of terrifying eyes was slowly opening. At the same time, the forehead of the black dragon that had fallen suddenly split open, and a black light flew out from the black dragon's forehead, and then directly rushed into the eyes in the depths of the bloody whirlpool. The palace's barrier was unable to stop this black light, or it could be said that the palace's barrier had silently disappeared the moment this pair of terrifying eyes appeared. What is this? The director of peace between man and nature was shocked. At this moment, Sword Saint Liulo frowned deeply, and a trace of panic and fear flashed through his eyes. He muttered to himself, I don't know, I don't understand, but perhaps this is what we are truly fighting against. The Empress of the Dragon Clan is probably nothing more than its puppet. Teacher, but at this moment, the golden-armored general stood up. It pulled out the golden greatsword from the black dragon's body, raised its head, pointed the sword at the sky, and roared. The eyes in the blood-red vortex suddenly condensed. In an instant, many huge rocks floated in the sky above the capital. The buildings on the streets of the capital, the huge rocks buried underground, everything that could be seen on the surface. At this moment, under the urging of some kind of mighty force, they were floating in the air. At the same time, they all rushed in the same direction, and their target was the golden-armored general who was pointing his sword at the sky. Faced with these countless huge rocks, the golden-armored general hurriedly waved its golden greatsword and smashed these huge rocks one by one. But there were simply too many of them. It only had one greatsword, but it was actually unable to cut through all these huge rocks. Not long after, the endless barrage of gigantic objects finally broke through the defense of the golden-armored general. It was instantly smashed in the back by a gigantic boulder that was dozens of meters tall. However, at the same time, an even bigger boulder came crashing down from above. The golden-armored general let out an unwilling roar. However, the attacks it received became denser and denser, and the blows it received became heavier and heavier. This is the mighty force of heaven and earth. The director of peace between man and nature was already one of the few experts among the younger generation, and he was only an opportunity away from the mysterious saint realm that broke through the limits of humans. He could feel this mighty force from heaven and earth. King Amos is fighting against heaven and earth, fighting against heaven and earth, unknowingly, Gong's son Ernyang had already stood up again. Her body was wrapped in some rags that were blown over by the strong wind, and then she carelessly wrapped them around her body. Throughout history, kings who dared to point their swords at heaven and earth did not have a good ending. Gong's son Ernyang swayed in the wind, and then her expression became gloomy. She was a fugitive who did not dare to point her sword at heaven and earth. Hu Lai's left hand kept pulling Tang Tianlin in the air, while Mo Sang was chasing after them relentlessly. Tang Tianlin could not complain now. Where exactly are you taking me? In this situation, can you at least say something? How could the arm talk? Tang Tianlin could not help but laugh bitterly. At this moment, his body did not seem to be his own. What is this? But at this time, Tang Tianlin saw a pair of terrifying eyes in the sky above the royal city. Within the endless vortex of red demonic clouds, that pair of terrifying eyes that made one's scalp go numb with a single glance. However, his left hand suddenly accelerated. Tang Tianlin even had a feeling that his left arm was about to be torn apart. Under the sudden and violent acceleration, his entire body flew horizontally. After that, he was projected onto a certain street in the outskirts of the capital city. It stopped. The surroundings were still desolate. Tang Tianlin lowered his head and looked at the broken signboard he was stepping on. He couldn't recognize the words of this world, but he could understand the meaning of the picture on the signboard. This place, I think it used to be a small store that sold weapons and equipment. At this moment, a thought flashed through Tang Tianlin's mind. I understand. But at this moment, a buzzing sound came from behind. Bastard! Don't run. What a spirited young man. Tang Tianlin only felt a big headache. But at this time, his left hand moved again, pulling him directly into the collapsed weapons shop. In the blink of an eye, an entrance to the underground passage appeared in front of him. His left hand calmed down, but remained in a raised state. Tang Tianlin was startled at this time, thinking about the strange movement of his left hand. There is something you want in here. Those small stones? His left hand still did not move, but this time it flashed. Oh, my left hand can shine. Will anyone believe it? I hope this left hand can really calm down after getting those fragments. With a trace of helplessness, Tang Tianlin could only brace himself and walk into this passage. Esmerilla. Jillian put her palm on the base of the crystal pillar, gently stroking the words engraved here, and read, "Is this your name? Esmerilla? Who are you? Why do I?" So, I'm the only one who can't understand these words? So what if you can understand the words of this world? Nan Xiaonan squinted, looking at Jillian, and couldn't help but pout. Now, she finally found the person, so she was more curious about how Mr. Luo was going to help. Nan Xiaonan didn't know what the situation outside was like, but with her experience, she could roughly guess. Therefore, she was even more curious. What kind of help should he give Jillian in order to qualify her to participate in this world's revolution? Of course, Nan Xiaonan was just curious about this method, but she would not be shocked by the next move. If you want to ask why, of course, it was, don't ask, just ask the child of the world. Since he was the child of the world, naturally, no matter how bizarre and unreasonable things were, it would form a theoretical closed loop. But no matter how eager Nan Xiaonan was, Boss Luo was still leisurely, looking at Jillian, who was staring at the crystal pillar absent-mindedly. He seemed to be more interested in this than what was happening outside. She didn't quite understand the indescribable existence as sexual preference. Nan Xiaonan felt the need to break the silence, so she cleared her throat and coughed twice. It was indeed very effective. At least Jillian was now awake from the state of confusion. His fingers retracted from the crystal pillar as if they were electrocuted, and then he shook his head hard. What's going on? Jillian rubbed between his eyebrows, trying to recall what happened before. I remember that I should be in the guard division, under a lake in the guards division. Oh right, the sword's soul beast. Jillian hurriedly pulled up the sleeve on his arm. On his arm, where the bloodline mark of the Highlanders was, there was now a small sword-shaped mark. This small sword mark seemed to be able to read his mind. At this time, a green light rushed out from the sword mark, and then turned into a palm-sized sword, swimming quickly around Jillian. It was the first time he saw such a strange thing, and he couldn't help but feel happy. With a thought, he commanded the small green sword to fly back and forth in the secret room. Unfortunately, he was a beginner, so he didn't control it well. The small cyan sword suddenly shot towards Nan Xiaonan. Nan Xiaonan was startled when she saw the small cyan sword flying toward her. She blinked her eyes, and after cursing, she quickly squatted down. The small green sword flew over Nan Xiaonan's head, and then directly sank into the thick wall. It was extremely sharp. I didn't mean it. Jillian was shocked at this time. I don't know how powerful it is. I'm sorry. Nan Xiaonan was about to say something, but Boss Luo suddenly said at this time, Mr. Jillian, how does it feel to have this small sword? Feel? Jillian, who was suddenly asked, opened his mouth and said subconsciously, I don't know, I always feel a little at a loss. But there is no doubt that it has become your strength. Boss Luo smiled and said, do you still remember what you told me? What you wanted to do? Jillian frowned and thought for a while. You mean to go on an adventure? Boss Luo nodded. In the past, didn't you always yearn to be like Mr. Zayart, traveling around the world, experiencing incredible stories, exploring thrilling secret places? In the past, you didn't have the ability to protect yourself, but now you can already do it. So, Jillian waved his hand, and the small green sword that had sunk into the wall instantly returned, hovering in his palm. He looked at it, lost in thought, so I can already do it, but this is obviously not enough. Boss Luo suddenly said at this time. Jillian subconsciously raised his head and looked at him. Boss Luo said slowly at this time, you should know that the outside world is very dangerous, especially those dangerous places. You will encounter a lot of dangers and hardships. So, if you want to set out with the goal of being an adventurer, you should properly arm yourself. Arm myself? Jillian was stunned. These words, he felt a little familiar, very familiar. Nan Xiaonan was also stunned, looking at this indescribable existence. Mr. Luo in disbelief. Was he so direct? Could it be that he could casually give out equipment and give out VIP 999 per attack? Yes. Boss Luo said at this time, for example, you will definitely need one more weapon so that you can have more choices and ways to deal with different enemies. What do you think of this sword? When you face enemies, you can use this sword to fight with them, and your small green sword will be hidden in your sleeve to give a fatal blow. I think it will be very good. After saying this, Boss Luo directly threw a long sword at Jillian. Humans are like that. They would instinctively catch the things thrown to them. So, in a panic, Jillian hurriedly caught the long sword with both hands. This isn't this. Jillian couldn't help but widen his eyes. This is not your... The sword that was thrown was actually one of the 3 divine weapons, Aurora's Aster. At the beginning, Jillian wanted to help to maintain it, to thank Boss Luo for helping him to pick up the kitchen knife. The beginning of everything. Of course, although the long sword can deal with many battles. Boss Luo said at this time, but in a real battle, there will be times when the long sword is not suitable. For example, when you plan to hunt opponents or monsters from a distance. Since you want to set out to become an outstanding adventurer, I think you should also need a weapon that can attack from a distance. Look at this bow. Throw. Catch. This bow. Jillian looked at the long bow in his hand with a slight headache. Well, he didn't recognize this long bow, but he felt that it was a little heavy. But with many years of experience in the weapon shop, he could still see that this bow seemed to be extraordinary. At this time, Jillian looked at Mr. Luo, who was seriously introducing the weapon to him at this time. He couldn't help but laugh. Wasn't this what he said when he worked a locked weapon shop and sold weapons to those unskilled adventurers, right? You should also need a suitable profession ability. Boss Luo took out a scroll at this time. This way, you can deal with more different needs. After all, you want to set out to become an outstanding adventurer, right? Jillian rolled his eyes at this time and said, Mr. Luo, stop fooling around. Let's not talk about this bow first, but this sword is obviously your own. How can I take it? This sword is actually not mine. Boss Luo said indifferently. I picked it up on the way to the king's city. Right? I haven't introduced myself yet. In fact, I am a traveling merchant. I also sell some weapons in my free time. Mr. Julien, I think we are fated to meet. I will sell these things to you at a cheap price. How cheap? Julien asked subconsciously. Oh, I didn't mean that. Professional habit. Professional habit. You don't have to worry about the cost. Boss Luo smiled mysteriously at this time, because someone will pay for you. After all, I promised to return this sword and bow to him. Nan Xiaonan suddenly showed a puzzled expression. Then, as if she thought of something, she suddenly stared at Julien. Chapter 1889. Nan Xiaonan had a question mark on her face. Her mouth was slightly open as she listened to Boss Luo's words. An unprecedented sense of fullness almost filled her entire body. Could it be that he had really won the treasure? Return. Aurora's Aster, total annihilation. Mr. Luo had said more than once that he would return the two godly weapons. But Nan Xiaonan never thought that he would return them in such a way. But it was unexpected, but it was also within reason. Everything was changing reasonably and rapidly under that absurd appearance. Was this the method of the indescribable existence that could directly reach out and manipulate the essence of the scene? He didn't even need to do anything earth-shattering. He only needed to touch one of the threads that made up everything, and it could bring about a violent chain reaction. At this time, Nan Xiaonan was even more frightened than when she made the choice, because she had realized a very frightening thing. If return was something that had long been decided, then in the midst of her indecision, she had finally made a difficult gamble. Choosing Julien. Was it also a fact that had long been decided? Had she also unknowingly become another string in the chain reaction caused by that string that had been plucked? Return. What do you mean by return? Julien was stunned. He wasn't like Nan Xiaonan, who could imagine a lot of things. He only knew that there was no free lunch in the world. Although he didn't know the origin of this longbow, he could see that it must be very valuable. As for this sword was something that his old man fought to maintain before he died. Although his old man Max was a terrible old man, his skills as a craftsman were really good. A sword that even he fought to maintain was obviously not an ordinary sword. There was even the so-called profession change scroll that could bring about the ability of a profession. This thing should be something that all professions would fight to obtain, right? You don't need to know this for now. Boss Luo said slowly, you only need to know one thing. From now on, these things belong to you, and you are fully qualified to have them. Julien was more and more confused. Boss Luo said, although they were sent to you through my hands, but to be honest, these things are completely acceptable to you, because this is a gift that you can accept without any burden from the person who loves you the most in this world, a gift from a parent. A gift from a parent. Julien stared blankly at the items in his hands. He discovered that even the scroll for changing professions was already in his hands. Who would be so good to him? Julien could imagine that the only person who was good to him in his life was his old man. There was also Uncle Zayart. He could sense that Uncle Zayart was someone who treated him well. He couldn't imagine his old man and Uncle Zayart. As for his parents, he had never seen both of his parents. Oh, there is also Sword Saintly, who gave him the Sword Soul Beast. But Julien had a feeling that there was another reason why he gave him the Sword Soul Beast sword. Is it my old man or Uncle Zayart? Julien didn't get a definite answer from Boss Luo. Open this scroll. Boss Luo suddenly said quickly, I'll help you complete the profession change scroll. This seemed to be an unquestionable gaze. Under this gaze, Julien's mind was almost blank. He subconsciously opened the scroll with both hands. Suddenly, a golden light flashed in the secret room. This was the power of the profession. Bathed in this golden light, Julien instantly obtained some information about the profession ability in the scroll, as well as the name of this profession. Glory Apostle. This is my profession? He was still feeling the wonderful knowledge under the impact of the scroll's light. However, at this time, an uninvited guest suddenly appeared in the secret room. It was a young man whose body seemed to be pulled by his own left hand, and who was being driven over. Tang Tianlin. Nan Xiaonan instantly recognized the identity of this strange young man and whispered his name. Tang Tianlin's left hand flashed with a strange light. At this moment, Tang Tianlin was also surprised by what he saw in the secret room. He was not only surprised by the two servants, Nan Xiaonan and Mr. Luo. The combination of the people here was quite wonderful. In the corner, there was the unconscious Princess Carol, a strange young man who was bathed in golden light. And there was also a woman sealed in a crystal pillar. What a beautiful woman! She was even more beautiful than Queen Hilda and Laura, whom he had seen before. In fact, when the pure appearance reached a certain level, it was almost the same. No one could be more beautiful than the other, and the feeling this beauty brought to people. The woman sealed in the crystal pillar, her smile seemed to have a strange magic. She could infect people and wash away all the worries in an instant, making people forget their worries and feel the beauty of life again. Just such a smile, just such a smile. Tang Tianlin couldn't help but whisper at this time, "Is already the most precious treasure in the world?" At this time, his left hand suddenly trembled, and Tang Tianlin suddenly woke up from this state of absent-mindedness. He frowned subconsciously, and before he had time to carefully analyze the situation at this time, the disobedient left hand once again pulled his body and began to move. And this time, the left hand's goal was the strange young man bathed in golden light. Jilian. According to the previous situation, this young man must have the stone fragments that the left hand wanted, otherwise the left hand would not bring him to this place. Old Tang, don't mess around. Seeing this, Nan Xiaonan instantly screamed, but in fact, the scream was not enough to stop Tang Tianlin at this time. At this moment, Nan Xiaonan could only directly block in front of Jilian. This child is not something you can touch. I don't want to touch him, but I can't control myself. You must control yourself. Bear with it. Go out and turn left for 2 kilometers. I remember there is a brothel. Go and look for it. You should be able to do it. Even if he had long been used to Nan Xiaonan's mouth along the way, at this time, Tang Tianlin still felt like he was getting to know her again. However, his left hand was indeed not something that he could control as he wished. At this time, his left hand, like a ghost, suddenly slapped Nan Xiaonan's shoulder and instantly sent her flying. There was even the sound of bones breaking. Nan Xiaonan directly hit the wall, her face full of horror, and she spat out a mouthful of old blood. Why are you so fierce? I'll explain later. I can't explain it clearly now. I'm sorry, Tang Tianlin quickly said. At this time, his left hand had directly invaded the golden light around Jilian, and without stopping, he aimed at Jilian's chest. Just as he was about to directly grab it, a black iron rod suddenly hit his left arm. Bastard, not only did you mess with my mother, now you won't even let go of a cute boy. Today, I will take care of this bastard who eats both men and women, and do justice for the heavens. Mo sang. This iron rod was so heavy, if it hit down, it would probably directly break the bones. At this time, his left hand was used as a support, and his palm hit the falling iron rod. The two strong forces collided, and the air waves exploded. Tang Tianlin and Mo Sang couldn't help but retreat at the same time. While flying back, Tang Tianlin stepped on the wall, stabilized his body, and then slowly landed. At this time, Mo Sang swung the iron rod in his hand, rushed forward, and protected in front of Jilian. Child, don't be afraid. I will protect you from being violated by this bastard. Hey, Brother Luo, you are also here. What a coincidence. Yes, what a coincidence. Boss Luo looked at Mo Sang's bulging chest muscles and showed a funny smile. Mr. Mo Sang, have you finished your physical training? I don't know, but my mother said that I don't have to do it, so I probably finished it. Anyway, I forgot where I counted to. Mo Sang's voice was buzzing at this time. Brother Luo, I won't catch up with you first. Wait until I kill this bastard who humiliated my mother. Then I will talk to you. Humiliated what? Boss Luo couldn't help but be startled. Mo Sang said angrily, this bastard. He grabbed my mother's breast. And there are 2 of them. Don't you think it's hateful? Grabbed. Boss Luo opened his mouth, and looked at Tang Tianlin with a face full of surprise. Tang Tianlin's face was already dark. Nan Xiaonan's eyes were wide open, and her face was full of disbelief. She didn't even have time to wipe the blood at the corner of her mouth, and said with a trembling voice, "Old Tang, you can even do that, Gong Sun and Yang? You really can't control yourself? Even if you do it yourself, it's better than that?" Old Tang Tianlin wanted nothing more than to bang his head against the wall and die. He would never be able to wash away this dark history. I said, "This is a misunderstanding. It's my left hand. I can't control my left hand." Roar. Nan Xiaonan opened her mouth and nodded. "Well, people who make mistakes say that can't control your left hand. I understand, but you can't give up on yourself." "Forget it." Tang Tianlin couldn't help but sigh. He still let Mo Sang refute, but now his eyes focused. He raised his left hand again, this time releasing a stronger light. Gritting his teeth, Tang Tianlin's resistance to his left hand's control of his body weakened a lot. He just wanted to finish it as soon as possible. "Good. Bastard, eat my iron rod." Mo Sang directly swung the iron rod, and in an instant, the heavy iron rod showed hundreds of thousands of afterimages under Mo Sang's swing. Tang Tianlin couldn't help but be startled. Facing this terrifying iron rod, he actually felt his heart tremble. However, his left hand was completely fearless. Like pulling chestnuts out of a fire, it actually accurately struck towards Mo Sang's forehead amidst the layers of afterimages. These two guys. Watching the battle, Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but widen her eyes. Her strength was gone, but her knowledge was not reduced. She could vaguely feel the danger of the iron rod and Mo Sang's entanglement. Why does this fighting style look so much like the fighting style of those guys who call themselves immortals? At this time, Mo Sang's left hand, which was aiming at Mo Sang's forehead, didn't hit. Mo Sang pulled back the iron rod in his hand skillfully, and the iron rod pointed at the back of Mo Sang's hand. Seeing this, Mo Sang had to pull back, and then pushed Mo Sang's chest with his palm. However, Mo Sang suddenly shouted, and instead of retreating, he moved forward and hit Mo Sang with his chest out. Bang! Under the collision, Tang Tianlin's figure was unsteady, and he took a few steps back. He could even feel a numbness coming from Mo Sang's left hand. Mo Sang's left hand, which had always been successful, seemed to have suffered a small loss. "Ha ha ha ha! Is this all you've got?" At this time, Mo Sang's eyes flashed like lightning, and his whole body exuded a violent and warlike aura. The canine teeth in his mouth became sharper, like a wild beast. "It's rare for me to come out, and you welcome me like this?" Mo Sang's voice was even different from the original. This guy was not the previous one. In an instant, Tang Tianlin felt that this big idiot with an iron rod in front of him was no longer the Mo Sang who called him a dog thief. It seemed to be a different person. At this time, the violent and warlike aura on Mo Sang's body became stronger and stronger. His laughter became louder and louder, and Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but cover her ears in pain at this time. Her eyes were also shaken to the point that blood flowed out, and her expression was even more horrified. This voice is right. It's you. You're the guy who was sealed in the roaring forest. You're Big Stone. Yo, little girl, you remember me? At this time, Mo Sang stopped laughing and casually glanced at Nan Xiaonan and said playfully, "You don't seem to be doing well. I taught you the visualization method, but you didn't find even a fragment, which really disappointed me. I found it, but you gave it to me." Nan Xiaonan shook her head at this time, and then sneered, "I knew you were up to no good. Didn't you suddenly appear out of nowhere, trying to catch the cicada like a mantis? TSK, you can obviously come out by yourself, but you still say that you've been sealed?" Mo Sang said expressionlessly, "I'm still inside the seal. This is just a remnant of my soul that I've entrusted to this iron rod. This child was destined to be destroyed in the previous era, but fortunately survived, but his soul was not complete. If it wasn't for my soul, this child would have died long ago." Nan Xiaonan pouted and said, I don't care. You lied to me and said that you don't remember what happened in the past. You're a F***king liar, a sealed trash. A black-hearted trash who cheated a weak girl like me to work without paying me. Relying on Boss Luo, the indescribable existence. Nan Xiaonan felt that she was floating at this time. She couldn't help but point at Mose and curse. Mo Sang suddenly knocked the iron rod in his hand on the ground, and hundreds of cracks appeared in the entire secret room. Fine, Mo Sang snorted. Since you want to know who I am, I'll let you know. As he spoke, the berserk and battle-hungry aura began to slowly condense on Mo Sang's body. In just a short moment, a huge white ape figure wearing a suit of armor and holding a long iron skirt appeared in front of everyone's eyes. I'm the head of Meishan, Yuan Hong. He turned the iron rod in his hand and pointed it at Tang Tianlin. Yang Jian, back then, you defeated me with the mountain river map and sealed my soul. Now that the world has changed, you don't dare to show your true body to me? Tang Tianlin couldn't help but open his mouth and looked at his left hand subconsciously. His left hand, which was flashing at a low frequency, suddenly shone brightly. In an instant, Tang Tianlin felt that his consciousness seemed to be washed away by the raging sea and sank into the deep sea. Then, something emerged from the depths of the sea and replaced him. It seems that in the years I've been away, the mountain river map has really changed. I don't know what it is. Tang Tianlin slowly opened his eyes at this time. Not only that, there was a small golden crack between his eyebrows. When the crack opened, a golden eye could be seen. Hashtag PS1. Thank you, Master Sky of Crack, for your generous gift yesterday. Come, have a taste of my tea. PS2, 0/1. Chapter 1890. The golden eye that split open between Tang Tianlin's brows had a terrifying aura that made Nan Xiaonan's soul feel as if it was being burned. Facing the bizarre golden eye, she, who only felt a faint pain, subconsciously moved her body. She moved to Boss Luo's side, but felt that the burning in her soul seemed to have lessened a lot. Since she swallowed the remnant soul of the real Nan Xiaonan, she also integrated a lot of knowledge of the modern world. Although most of it was fragmented, it didn't prevent her from understanding the unlucky modern world from a new perspective. Yuan Hong, Yang Jian? Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but ask cautiously in a low voice. Mr. Luo, these two, are they mentioned in that something novel? Something and something? Something and something? It's not something and something. Boss Luo chuckled. Lord of Purity and Magic, Yang Jian, and Trash Star-Lord, Yuan Hong, belong to the characters in the Investiture of the Gods. Investiture of the Gods? Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but frown. The fragmented memories and her own knowledge began to combine wonderfully. They are all myths? Even the modern world outside of us has their legends? Maybe. Boss Luo answered noncommittally. But he didn't intend to hide the conversation between him and Nan Xiaonan. Mose, who called himself Yuan Hong, and Tang Tianlin, who called himself Yang Jian, stared at them at the same time. Especially the golden eye between Tang Tianlin's eyebrows. It was shining brightly. But the first to speak was Mose, who called himself Yuan Hong. Mose frowned at this time. Boy, who are you? Since you know me and Yang Jian, are you also a descendant of the ancient Kelowna? You can say that. Boss Luo nodded. The two of you are also very famous in the outside world I live in. Well, they often appear on TV. But true Monarch Yang has more scenes. Hey, I'm so angry. Unexpectedly, Mo Sang's face was filled with rage. If it wasn't for this three-eyed brat borrowing the Empress's treasure, how could he have one against me? In the conferred god battle, it is still unknown who will win. However, Boss Luo said, as far as I know, the investiture god battle should have already ended. What do you know? Mo Sang snorted coldly. The conferred god battle isn't over yet. It's still going on. If it weren't for that, this venerable soul would have been destroyed long ago. Oh, Boss Luo said in surprise. There's such a thing? The conferred god battle isn't over yet. Why isn't there an end to it? Mo Sang sneered and said, I've met Gong Sun Earnyang and learned from her that in your world, the investiture of the gods' battle was actually spread through a novel. What a joke. This is probably the scheme of those bastards from Chan School. In a world that we have never touched, they are despicably weakening the legend of GS School. In the real conferred god battle in the void, Chan School is a joke. That's true. Boss Luo looked at Tang Tianlin curiously. Fresh. However, Tang Tianlin said expressionlessly, in the conferred god battle, everyone has their own master and uses all their means. If the disciples of GS School can do it, why can't we? In the endless void world, I'm afraid that the disciples of GS School will slander the disciples of GS School even more. Bullsh *T. Mo Sang was instantly enraged. However, Tang Tianlin ignored him. The golden eyes on his forehead flashed as he looked straight at Boss Luo and said indifferently, I'm going to take back the erased spirit core of the mountain river diagram and restore the original appearance of the mountain river diagram. Don't stop me. With that, Tang Tianlin moved. He only wanted to take Ji Lian at this time. As for Ji Lian, the golden light of his profession was slowly fading, which meant that his profession change would be completed soon. At this time, he couldn't move, but he could hear. However, he couldn't understand a little bit of what these guys were saying. He could only watch as Tang Tianlin reached out to him. Yang Jian, you want to regain control of the mountain river diagram? Have you asked for my permission? Mo Sang laughed wildly and smashed out with his iron rod. I finally instigated this erased spirit to provoke the will of this subworld when you weren't here. When they were fighting, I used the last of my strength to break the core of the mountain river diagram. I finally taught the new erased spirit that GS School is the true sect under the Tao of Heaven. I haven't escaped yet. How can I do as you wish? As expected, Tang Tianlin instantly snorted coldly. I was wondering why the mountain river diagram could evolve into such a ridiculous world. I shouldn't have failed to destroy your divine soul because of a mistake. Yuan Hong, let's settle the grudges of the past together today. With that, Tang Tianlin waved his hand, and the floor in the secret room began to shatter. A large amount of gravel gathered in his hand and turned into a long spear with 2 sides and 3 points. Raising the long spear, Tang Tianlin instantly stabbed at Mo Sang, who was holding the long iron rod. Bang! In an instant, 2 terrifying forces directly blew up the entire secret room into pieces. In the violent fluctuations, Tang Tianlin and Mo Sang rushed straight to the sky. At the same time, in the sky above the royal capital, the pair of horrifying eyes in the red demon cloud vortex suddenly opened. Lightning was rolling in the endless red demon cloud. Huge lightning bolts struck down from the demon cloud and crazily gathered in the long iron rod in Mo Sang. His hand. At this moment, Mo Sang was like the emperor of lightning surrounded by lightning bolts. Tang Tianlin, on the other hand, looked much calmer. However, while he was holding the long spear that was temporarily constructed, a gentle light was flowing on his body. Although it wasn't as ferocious as Mo Sang, it was neutral and peaceful as if nothing could harm it. At this moment, the entire world began to shake crazily. Rumble. The royal capital, the last country in the world, the only royal capital of the Elnis Kingdom, cracked in half like a thin piece of wood being pulled apart. This was because Tang Tianlin and Mo Sang had become arrogant at this moment. I think of a phrase, the fight between immortals. On the ground, Nan Xiaonan felt a big headache and couldn't help but mutter, of course, these guys have always called themselves immortals. I don't know about Yang Jian and Yuan Hong, but I know about the God-sealing battle. You should have told me earlier. Lady Nan, tell me about the God-sealing battle, you know, Boss Luo suddenly said. The battle in the void is so famous. You, an indescribable existence, have the nerve to ask me about it. Isn't this a game that you, indescribable existence, created to kill time? Are you a country bumpkin who hasn't left the village? But this country bumpkin is super strong. Something like that. However, Nin Xiaonan still nodded subconsciously, knowing that it wasn't the time to tell stories. She subconsciously looked around. Jillian was here, and so was the crystal pillar that sealed the mysterious woman. Even Princess Carol was here. When the secret room was blown up by Tang Tianlin and Imo Sang, Boss Luo obviously took action and brought them out safely from the center of the explosion. Mr. Luo, Nan Xiaonan swallowed her saliva and asked nervously, "It seems that the real owner of chessboard has appeared this time." And Big Stone, oh, Imo Sang, "Bah, the one called Yuan Hong. This level of battle isn't something that a simple human can intervene in. What about Jillian?" Jillian. At this time, Jillian was watching the fight between the immortals in the sky. It was very strange. This world was very strange to Jillian. So strange that he felt that he might be having a nightmare about the end of the world that he hadn't woken up from. But since ancient times, humans have never planned to give up because of this. Boss Luo said softly at this time, "They will always do everything they can to get closer, closer, even if it's just a little. It's really impossible." Nan Xiaonan shook her head and said firmly, "Insignificant humans can't get rid of the control of the powerful void." "No, Mr. Luo, are you planning to take action?" "I'm not." Boss Luo chuckled and looked at Nan Xiaonan with a smile. At this moment, Nan Xiaonan blinked her eyes. Suddenly, a bad feeling arose spontaneously, and even made her tremble involuntarily. Boss Luo said seriously, "Lady Nan, you chose Jillian, so please treat your choice well and protect him. I'll leave it to you." Hey, wait. Nan Xiaonan reached out subconsciously to grab Mr. Luo in front of her. However, Boss Luo was fading away in front of Nan Xiaonan's eyes. Don't. She finally grabbed nothing. "Don't go, you scumbag. I can't deal with it. I really can't deal with it." Nan Xiaonan squatted on the ground and wailed weakly. "I can't deal with it now, and I can't deal with it before. This is the real powerful void. How can you play with me like this?" She sat on the ground in a daze, as if she had been hollowed out. "Can tell me what happened?" Nan Xiaonan raised her head subconsciously and looked at Jillian, who was looking at her with a pale face. Jillian was the one who said this. At this time, Nan Xiaonan suddenly quivered, rushed up, and directly grabbed Jillian's collar with both hands. "I was blindfolded. I shouldn't have chosen you." Why? I had a chance to make the right choice. It was right in front of me. Why didn't I cherish it? I turned off the easy mode and turned on the nightmare mode. Why? It's all your fault." Looking at Nan Xiaonan, who was about to cry in snot, Jillian subconsciously felt that he was wronged, but he couldn't tell how he was wronged, as if he was the one who was born to be the scapegoat. "I'm sorry," he said blankly. "What's the use of saying sorry?" Nan Xiaonan scolded angrily. "If you have the time, you might as well think about what to do next to protect yourself in this terrible situation." Jillian, pale with fright, nodded. Nan Xiaonan angrily pushed Jillian away at this time, then sat directly on the ground, and then rubbed her head hard. Jillian could only say in surprise, What are you doing? Think of a way." Nan Xiaonan didn't even raise her head at this time. She said quickly, "I have to think clearly. In this world-class revolution, who is the real destiny? Who is the one who should be trampled on? Who is the direction? I need to see the real direction clearly. Let's see what my damn future boss wants. This is the real test for me. F*CKU. Okay." Jillian nodded. Then he took a deep breath, gritted his teeth, and pulled out Aurora's aster from a scabbard. Then he put on a battle-ready posture and stood in front of Nan Xiaonan, looking around nervously. What are you doing?" Nan Xiaonan was startled. Jillian said, "Protecting you. Although it's useless, it's better than doing nothing. I don't know what happened, but you and I are the only ones left here. If you want something, then all I can do is protect you for now." "You?" Nan Xiaonan subconsciously opened her mouth and then muttered to herself, "Although it may be useless, it's better than doing nothing. They will always use all means to get closer, even if it's just a little bit. Although it's useless, even if it's just a little, even if it's useless a little. I know. You what's wrong? Jillian couldn't help but ask cautiously. A little. Nan Xiaonan suddenly stood up and grabbed Jillian's arm. Then she waved demonic diagram and summoned a flying monster. She pulled Jillian and jumped on it. Wow, what are you doing? Jillian was shocked. Nan Xiaonan shouted in the wind. I'm going to send you to your death. WH what? A small figure in a white dress was silently standing in the void. In front of the small figure, there was a ball shadow the size of a basketball. At this moment, the shadow of the sphere was shattering bit by bit. She didn't move her eyes and just silently watched the ball shadow break. She would say something from time to time. Breaking 17, 89%, breaking 21, 314%. If you keep calculating, you won't be able to do anything. Suddenly, a gentle voice came from behind the small figure. She turned her head back, and her dull eyes gradually became a little lively. Restricted person, do you want to take back this subworld that originally belonged to you? Boss Luo asked softly. Can I? Bro? Her voice gradually had a trace of human-like undulation. I chose a protagonist for you. Boss Luo smiled and said, It's your apostle, the glorious apostle goddess. Hashtag PS1. I forgot to write the previous chapter as usual. My memory is terrible. PS2, so 1/1. Finish writing and sleep. Chapter 1891. Far away, in the distant past. In that dazzling star, there was also chaos without boundaries. Every moment that passed in his perception, there were all kinds of tangible and intangible information flowing through. They were like two fish swimming against the current in this huge river of time and information. One was a golden deity, while the other was a youth wrapped in a red and black cloak. Suddenly, one of them paused as if studying something in the endless river, and so did the other. What is it, Yang Jian? The voice of the red and black cloaked youth rang then. The golden deity who had stopped first. Yang Jian was quietly paying attention to something. It's nothing. Just found a suitable small world. His companion was not surprised. They were Yang Jian's companion and the people he belonged to. They were used to calling the different subworlds of different shapes and sizes small worlds. As for the void itself, which was the colossal world, they believed that there were perhaps 3,000 such worlds, hence the term 3,000 colossal worlds. Of course, 3,000 was a general concept, implying infinity. Perhaps it would be more appropriate to call it infinite colossal world. Oh, right. You're planning to replenish the inner world function of the divine item you have. The red and black cloaked youth nodded. He was a little envious of his companion on the path of exploration. Like him, Cain was from a group of people who called themselves immortals from a subworld of mythology. Yang Jian had a very mysterious diagram that could directly absorb an entire small world. In the end, it would obliterate everything in the small world and refine the origin of the small world. The essence of a small world was the only hard currency that could be fully circulated in the void, a unique currency that one could not bear to part with as long as they held it. I'll wait for you. He knew what Yang Jian wanted to do next, and so agreed to wait. It was truly difficult for him to meet such a like-minded companion in this endless void. He was indeed a little too lonely on the path of exploring the primordial origin. I'll be back soon. Yang Jian nodded and glanced at the red and black cloaked youth beside him. Cain did not have to wait for long before the golden deity returned. Perhaps he returned with a full load, he thought. My luck is pretty good. As expected, Yang Jian said with a smile, we encountered a small world that has evolved 6 times. If we can refine it normally, we can basically replenish our previous losses. This is indeed a good thing. Cain also smiled. It was not rare to come across such good things in the void, as long as you had enough time to explore. Of course, it was not uncommon to encounter good things. Similarly, it was not uncommon to encounter bad things. They set off to explore again, following the original call in their hearts, continuing to travel against the flow of this long river of time. However, not long ago, The golden deity and the red and black cloaked youth stopped again. Something was blocking their path. It's Void Azura. Quick, you hold it back. I'm going to attack. If the Void Azura summons countless Void original demons, it'll be troublesome. Two incomparably powerful waves instantly shook a small section of the long river of time. Even in the infinite universe, this was considered a powerful force. In the long river of time, dazzling fireworks appeared in an instant. Yangjian, die! Under the red night sky, Mo sang, who carried the endless power of thunder, smashed out huge thunder dragons with the long iron rod in his hand. This was the vast power of heaven. Facing the vast power of heaven, Tang Tianlin looked calm. He waved the three-pointed spear in his hand, and endless explosions appeared in the sky. The flashing lights were just like the fireworks of the new year. I've only left for a while, and you've already stolen the mountain river diagram to such an extent. You're indeed a member of the GS sect. Treasures belong to those who are capable. Who told you not to be here? Mo sang, laughed crazily, and said, I can only say that my luck is stronger than yours. In this God-confirmant battle, I'm afraid that if it weren't for you bastards of the Chan sect, you would have been suppressed to the point that you can't even raise your heads. Tang Tianlin said indifferently, I've left the God-confirmant battle long ago. I'm not interested in the current situation of the battle. The ferocious Mo sang, couldn't help but be stunned. You've left the battlefield? I've left that war long ago, and I've embarked on the path of exploration with like-minded friends. Tang Tianlin said indifferently, it's only because I encountered the Void Azura in the infinite boundless world that I fell. It's not what you think. I was defeated in the war, and my body and primordial spirit were separated. Bastards of the Chan sect, I don't believe the nonsense of you sanctimonious people. Mo sang, snorted coldly. Hey, after I kill you and take the mountain river diagram, I'll return to the battlefield directly. With that, Mo sang roared toward the sky. He pointed the iron rod in his hand at the terrifying eyes of the blood-red demon Cloud Vortex. In an instant, a blood-red light shot out from the terrifying eyes and hit Mo sang right in the middle. After being hit by this blood-red light, the muscles all over Mo sang's body bulged, cracked, and then expanded. Fine white hair grew out of his body, and his body expanded in the air. The entire world was shaking crazily, and the mountains and rivers began to collapse. In the end, he turned into a huge white ape that towered into the clouds. Just the sole of his feet was already bigger than the entire Elness Kingdom's capital. That terrifying steel rod was now as big as a mountain range. Looking from the ground, one couldn't see the entire body of this huge white ape anymore. Compared to this huge white ape, that huge golden-armored general was now like a small beetle. Not to mention that tiny human. This is Yuan Hong. Gongsun Ernyang muttered to herself. The mythical Dharma world is just like this. She heaved a sigh of relief, as if she had seen the end of it all. Gongsun Ernyang sat down cross-legged. She was the first servant to descend from the chessboard. She was also the first one to come into contact with the sealed big rock in the roaring forest. At this moment, a slightly huge figure flew across the sky. Gongsun Ernyang couldn't help but frown. She raised her head to look and saw that it was a flying monster, and on top of this monster, Nan Xiaonan and Ji Lian were shockingly sitting. Gongsun Ernyang didn't know who Ji Lian was, but she noticed another thing. That was, this flying monster was carrying two people, and there was another person in its mouth. It was the evil Princess Carol that was born by King Amos and Queen Hilda. Gongsun Ernyang didn't know what Nan Xiaonan wanted to do, but she vaguely felt that it wasn't a good thing. At this point, it's useless to do anything. Gongsun Ernyang shook her head. It's just a futile effort. People don't want to live in vain, but in the end, it's nothing but useless work. Gongsun Ernyang slowly closed her eyes at this moment. Unexpectedly, a gust of wind blew. Gongsun Ernyang suddenly opened her eyes, only to see that the flying monster turned back and quickly landed in front of her. Gongsun Ernyang frowned. At this moment, the monster had completely stopped in front of her. "What? Are you here to ridicule this old woman?" Gongsun Ernyang said indifferently. Nan Xiaonan was startled at this moment, and then she asked seriously, "Gongsun Ernyang, I heard that you were bullied by Old Tang and were caught. Is it true?" "Old Tang?" Gongsun Ernyang couldn't help being startled, and then she realized that Old Tang was probably the bastard who attacked her. She immediately became furious. "You know that bastard? What are you going to do?" "I just want to confirm." Nan Xiaonan smiled embarrassedly, and then she quickly waved her hand. "It's okay. Bye-bye." With that, the flying monster instantly flapped its eyes, and under Ji Lian's incredulous gaze, it took off again. Gongsun Ernyang couldn't help being startled, and then she became furious. "How dare you? How dare you humiliate this old woman?" She didn't expect that Nan Xiaonan still had the mood to ask such a boring question at this moment of crisis and great change. What's more, this question obviously succeeded in provoking Gongsun Ernyang's emotions, which should have been calmed down. "Reckless girl." Gongsun Ernyang gritted her teeth. "This old woman must teach you a good lesson today." The flying monster had already taken off, and Nan Xiaonan hurriedly said, "Old woman, don't make it sound so nice. You King disliked me from the beginning, right? If you have the ability, come and hit me, hit me." Gongsun Ernyang had never seen such a request, and now she was jumping in anger. As a hidden powerhouse in this chessboard world, Gongsun Ernyang's eyes were red. Obviously, Nan Xiaonan's question had succeeded in infuriating this horrible woman. "If you want to die, I'll help you." The sword light crisscrossed, weaving a huge sword light net, and quickly covered the back of the flying monster. Nan Xiaonan saw this, so she took a deep breath, and then used all her strength to fiercely grab the back of the flying monster's neck. The flying monster screamed at this time, frantically flapping its wings, and its speed increased a lot in an instant. Frightened, Ji Lian could only tightly grab the hair on the back of the monster. His body was already flying horizontally. Nan Xiaonan said that she wanted to send him to death. He would probably be chopped to death by the furious old woman behind him. "Help! Help! Shut up!" Nan Xiaonan punched on Ji Lian's head. "I can't concentrate." You, what do you want to do?" Ji Lian said in horror. "Find someone." Nan Xiaonan said quickly. "Find a way to help you gather the 3 heavenly weapons, and then summon the dragon god." "What? I'm your guardian now," Nan Xiaonan said fiercely. "I was forced." Facing Nan Xiaonan, who seemed to want to swallow him alive, Ji Lian was afraid of being limited, so he didn't dare to speak, only feeling more and more humble. When a woman goes crazy, it turns out to be this scary. No wonder Uncle Zayard had always instilled a point of view in him when he discussed women with him. Women are not as good brothers. Women are all scary creatures. Without a group of good brothers who can give you advice and help you block your spears and swords, you must remember not to provoke women and so on. Maybe I'm right. At this moment, the flying monster was circling around the ruins of the palace. Gongsun Ernyang's chase was still terrible. "Found it!" Nan Xiaonan exclaimed. Suddenly, Nan Xiaonan forcefully pinched the flying monster's ribs again. Ji Lian felt the pain just by looking at it. The flying monster immediately squeezed out a few drops of tears and crashed down head first. Young Wali showed more and more impatience on his face. It was like a vicious wolf that was pushing the maid Tina hard in the middle of the ruins. "No, I still can't contact Tiff." The maid screamed at this moment. Because at this moment, young man Wally quickly walked in front of her, grabbed her collar, lifted her up, and threw her to the side. Useless thing. Tina's body hit the broken wall, breaking it instantly. She fell to the ground, spitting out blood. She was terrified and didn't dare to raise her head. I'm sorry. Humph. Young Wally snorted. "All of you are useless." That being said, when he saw the huge white ape that towered into the clouds, his face couldn't help but turn as pale as a sheet of paper. This wasn't something that the chessboard, in his understanding, should be. He wanted to stop this game from the outside world, but the way to turn the tables, the connection between Tina and Tiff from the twin maids didn't work. What happened? Did Tiff succeed? She didn't succeed. Young Wally lowered his head, biting his fingers. He looked more and more nervous and anxious. His innate anxiety seemed to be magnified infinitely at this time, making him feel uncomfortable and unable to calm down no matter what. Could it be that Tiff betrayed me? She has gotten together with Gong Lina? Young Wally grabbed his hair with both hands. No, Gong Lina doesn't have that ability. But why? So annoying. So annoying. So annoying. So annoying. So annoying. So annoying. Master Wally, up there, Tina yelled at the top of her lungs. Young Wally raised his head subconsciously, but he saw a huge black shadow swooping down toward him. He could see the guy on the flying monster. You're Lisa's servant? Young Wally was stunned. Nan Xiaonan quickly grabbed Jillian and jumped down from the flying monster. They rolled on the ground awkwardly and finally rolled in front of young Wally. Young Wally frowned subconsciously, but Nan Xiaonan directly pulled Jillian up and said loudly, Mr. Wally, I brought your enemy to you. Kill her and take revenge. We'll talk about the salary later. Her voice was like a broken throat, which could be heard from afar. The young man Wally opened his mouth. His innate anxiety seemed to have changed qualitatively due to the quantitative change. Give me your life. Young Wally raised his head subconsciously, but what he saw was Gong's son Ernyang, who was surrounded by thousands of swords and her murderous eyes. He stared blankly at Gong's son Ernyang and instantly understood the meaning of Nan Xiaonan's words. You motherf asterisk her. Chapter 1892. Young Wally's hands were chopped off by Gong's son Ernyang. Although he spent a lot of money to regrow his hands were still chopped off. Even the 2 slate fragments in his possession had been snatched away by Gong's son Ernyang. The enmity between them was not small. Young Wally had been holding a grudge in his heart, but he didn't plan to take revenge immediately. In this ever-changing chessboard, he didn't have enough confidence that he could control the changes of the chessboard. The accumulation that he had painstakingly accumulated in the chessboard was of no use in the face of the gigantic Mosin white ape. It was already difficult for him to protect himself. As for revenge, he could only postpone it. He didn't expect that Gong's son Ernyang would come again. You motherf asterisk her. He was obviously about to jump up and down and curse at him. However, Nan Xiaonan didn't give him the time to vent his anger. Mr. Wally, you sent Old Tang to rob this old woman, and Old Tang seemed to have succeeded. He even humiliated this old woman to vent your anger. Remember, don't forget to reward him. F*CKU. What the hell are you talking about? Young Wally squeezed his throat and made a low and hoarse voice like a beast. Nan Xiaonan blinked her eyes quietly. Young Varley immediately had a bad feeling. At this moment, he only felt a terrifying, murderous intent from hell locking on all the pores on his body, and the cold air seeped into his body, as if it was going to freeze his internal organs in an instant. The sword light on Gong's son Ernyang's body increased by several times, and the sword tip was pointed at young Wally's forehead. She screamed, It's you? Die. Young Wally felt that he was wronged. However, facing the enemy who chopped off his hands and took away the important slate fragments, young Wally was furious, even though he knew that it was Nan Xiaonan's fault. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Young Wally instantly waved the snake that devours all spells. Young Wally gritted his teeth as he was tortured again and again, and his mentality had already collapsed. Kill, 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 kill. Last time, he was ambushed by Gong's son Ernyang, so his hand were cut off. This time, young man Wally attacked with hatred and directly activated the special skill of Snake that devours all spells. Under the effect of this godly weapon, Gong's son Ernyang's explosive sword light started to bend in the air, as if it was consumed by something, and its power was reduced by more than half. Seeing that the special ability of the godly weapon worked, young Wally's eyes lit up. Old man, today, I'll let you taste what's more terrible than hell. Bastard. Gong's son Ernyang snorted coldly and began to avoid directly contacting the serpent that devours all spells. At this time, Yuan Chu, Nan Xiaonan, and Jilian were hiding behind half of the collapsed wall. They poked their heads out and watched the duel nervously. You purposely lured this terrifying old lady in front of this guy. Jilian looked at Nan Xiaonan with fear, confirming that women were terrifying creatures. This guy, I seem to have seen him before. I remember now. He came to our weapon shop once and took something from my father. Wally went to Mr. Max. When did that happen? Nan Xiaonan was stunned subconsciously. Jilian said it was the day I met Mr. Luo. Before I met Mr. Luo, Nan Xiaonan frowned at this time, not knowing what to think. At this time, there was a new change in the duel between Gongsun Ernyang and young man Wally. Gongsun Ernyang superimposed a sword light and then directly contacted with the snake that devours all spells. With its special ability, the godly weapon instantly twisted and devoured the power of the sword light. However, Gongsun Ernyang superimposed too much sword light on this sword, and the godly weapon couldn't completely twist and devour it. Finally, Gongsun Ernyang's hand twisted Wally's wrist, which was holding the sword, with the sword light. My hand! My hand! You took my hand! The godly weapon, snake that devours all spells, which was flicked away, directly spread out, and finally fell to the ground. Wally's broken hand was still on the sword hilt. Good chance. At this moment, Nan Xiaonan's eyes widened, and the demonic diagram was pushed out. Then, she saw a black shadow sneaking out from the ground. A black shadow suddenly appeared under the godly weapon, and then something directly pulled the godly weapon into the shadow. It suddenly returned to Nan Xiaonan's side. Powerful strength doesn't necessarily mean good. Practical things are good. Nan Xiaonan directly put away the demonic diagram and then fished out something from the black shadow. It was the snake that devours all spells of the 3 godly weapons. Let's go. With the godly weapon in hand, Nan Xiaonan held this big bone sword and then lifted Ji Lian's collar with one hand and jumped into the sky. A black shadow flew over, and in an instant, it successfully carried her and Ji Lian, flying into the distance. This series of actions was as smooth as flowing water, without any hesitation. When Ji Lian's brain processed this information, he heard Gongsun Ernyang's angry roar from behind. Lady Nan, why do you seem to be very? Ji Lian swallowed at this time, and said hesitantly, very skilled. Nan Xiaonan's face darkened. If there was a reason for this, it would be because of the difficult period of time when she was a novice in the void and lived an ignoble existence. Don't talk so much nonsense. Take it. Nan Xiaonan directly stuffed the snake that devours all spells in her hand into Ji Lian's arms. Ji Lian took it in a panic. Then, Nan Xiaonan stared at Ji Lian at this time, and said, Is there any reaction? Ji Lian shook his head blankly. Nan Xiaonan asked again, something like a hint or something like that. Anything is fine. Is there any? Didn't you say that as long as you have 2 godly weapons at the same time, it will trigger their combination ability? You have 3 godly weapons in hand. Don't you have any reaction? Ji Lian still shook his head blankly. No. Nan Xiaonan bit her thumb at this time and quickly dodged her feet. No. This is clearly what Mr. Luo said. If you have 2 godly weapons at the same time, there will be a new combination ability. There is no reason that when you have 3 godly weapons, there will be no reaction at all. Am I wrong? What's the matter? Is it because Ji Lian is not a servant? Give me all the weapons. Let me try. Ji Lian hesitated and finally listened to Nan Xiaonan's words and took out all 3 godly weapons. However, when the 3 godly weapons were in hand, Nan Xiaonan did not receive any prompt. Even a normal prompt of obtaining an item was not received. How? How is it? Is there any change? Ji Lian asked nervously. Nan Xiaonan shook her head and thought for a while. Nothing happened. I guess it's because the will of chessboard directly manifested, which is a convenient source of information for servants, but it also stopped. Then Nan Xiaonan turned around to take a look. She didn't know when, but a gloomy and frightening face had appeared behind the flying magical beast. It turned out that Gongsun Ernyang had quietly caught up with him. She even stepped forward and stood directly on the back of the flying monster. Nan Xiaonan's throat swallowed subconsciously. Gongsun Ernyang's eyes were fixed at this time, and she waved her hand, and a sword light slowly shot out from her fingertips. Wait a minute. Mo Sang's mother. Wait, let's talk. There's nothing to talk about. Gongsun Ernyang sneered and walked forward step by step. Nan Xiaonan was covered in cold sweat, and he quickly waved his hands and said quickly, Mo Sang's mother. I thought about it later. In fact, it is not a big deal. You think about it. Mo Sang's father has been dead for so long, and you have been single for so long. You must be very lonely, right? There is no need to be angry with me. I think Old Tang is actually not bad. Why don't you two make do with each other, and I help you two to be a matchmaker? I know, Old Tang is a guy who does not want to work hard. He must be very happy. Ha 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 ha. Once, twice. You humiliate me like this. Gongsun Ernyang's face was extremely ugly. She raised her hand, and the sword light on her fingertips instantly became tens of meters long and fiercely slashed down. Nan Xiaonan was shocked, and he was running toward the flying monster. But right at this moment, a huge golden palm forcefully swatted over from the side. The speed was so fast that it was hard to imagine. Gongsun Ernyang subconsciously turned around and only felt that she was hit by something in an instant, and then all the organs in her body were about to burst. Her body was directly slapped to the ground by this huge golden palm and directly crashed down, creating a huge crater. The flying monster hurriedly flapped its wings in fright and stopped. In front of it, there was a huge golden armored general. At this time, the flying monster's height was about the chest of this golden armored general. Nan Xiaonan subconsciously raised her head and looked at the huge face of this golden armored general and sighed. Jillian was looking at it in a daze. He felt as if this valiant and enormous golden-armored military general was looking right at him. Only, the golden-armored military general's body was riddled with scars, and much of the golden armor on his body was shattered, as if he had experienced an unimaginably fierce battle. King Amos. You're King Amos, right? Nan Xiaonan suddenly quivered. I know it's you. I also know that you can hear what I say. Listen, we've been to the secret room under the weapon shop, and we also saw that sealed woman, Esmira. The golden armored general was motionless and just silently lowered his head and gazed. Nan Xiaonan gritted her teeth. I guess Esmira must have a special relationship with Jillian. King Amos, you must have a special relationship with him too. Otherwise, you wouldn't have helped us just now. Total annihilation. Suddenly, King Amos's voice sounded in Jillian and Nan Xiaonan's ears at the same time. Nan Xiaonan subconsciously asked, What? Total annihilation? Soul arrow. King Amos's voice was intermittent. Only by shooting the soul arrow, as long as it kills Mosin's soul, it may not be effective. At this time, Nan Xiaonan felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She muttered to herself, In the game of beast chess, an elephant can eat an elephant, a lion, and a tiger. But the smallest mouse can eat an elephant. Tiny human, tiny human. This is a tiny human. Tell me, what should I do? The golden-armored general stretched out his hand. The three godly weapons in Nan Xiaonan's hands instantly flew out and rushed to the golden-armored general's palm. I'll do it. I'll shoot this soul arrow. Speaking of which, when Gongsun Ernyang found out that Nan Xiaonan was using her to kill someone, and knew that Nan Xiaonan's real goal was the divine weapon in young Wali's hand, she instantly gave up on dealing with young Wali, who had his hand cut off again. She just waved her hand and shot out a sword light, nailing young Wali to the pillar, and then chased after Nan Xiaonan. Young Wali, who was nailed to the pillar, kept screaming miserably. The sword light not only nailed him to the pillar, but it also kept releasing some strange energy that kept cutting his body. This was an inhumane torture, Gong's son Earnyong didn't kill him immediately, but she didn't plan to let him go easily. The pain brought by the sword light was even more unbearable than death. Young Wally, who was nailed to the pillar, had tears in his eyes, water coming out of his nose, and saliva coming out of his mouth. "Master! Master!" Tina, the maid, rushed over in horror. Her hands directly pulled out the sword light that nailed the young man Wally. However, when Tina's hands grasped the sword light, her palms were cut by the sword light and started to bleed. The maid screamed and withdrew her hands instinctively. "Tina! Tina! Help me, help me! I'm in pain!" "Master! Master!" The servant girl gritted her teeth and rushed forward again. She grabbed the sword light with both hands. But this time, the sword chi was released again. The servant girl of the castle was cut by the sword chi, and she was covered in blood in an instant. She was spread out by the sword light and fell to the ground. "Tina, help me, help me. I can't stand it, I can't stand it." "Master!" The maid struggled to get up again, but at this moment, a hand pressed on Tina's shoulder and pressed her down. "You can't do this." "Miss Tina." Tina raised her head and looked at the person who pressed her down, Dr. Gores, and it was Dr. Gores who pressed Tina down. However, there was another person beside Dr. Gores. He walked past Dr. Gores and walked towards the young Wally who was nailed to the stone pillar. It was Mr. Sneeve. How many times have I prayed for salvation in my nightmares, hoping to dream of such a scene? Mr. Sneeve walked to the young Wally. Finally, my prayer was answered. In the silence, a small, elf-like light and shadow was flying here. It flew around Mr. Sneeve for a while and then flew away. It seemed that no one noticed the existence of this small light and shadow until it suddenly flew to a certain place and stopped. It stopped on a shoulder, on Boss Luo's shoulder. At this moment, Araya, in white, was beside Luochio. "Why did you come here?" Araya, in white, was puzzled and looked up. After thinking for a while, he added, Bro? Probably." Boss Luo lowered his head and looked at the small light and shadow on his shoulder, saying softly, "It's hard to refuse some inner desires. This child has been following me since the beginning of the Roaring Forest." Chapter 1893. The little light shadow flew out from Boss Luo's shoulder again. It didn't go far but flew back and forth around Boss Luo, as if it was asking for help. Araya, in white clothes, looked at the little light shadow expressionlessly. It was a soul that didn't belong to the subworld it was in charge of. But because of the invasion of the chessboard, it had a special chance to transform here. In fact, Araya, in white clothes, didn't welcome this kind of foreign soul because it would cause chaos in the subworld. "Have you decided?" Boss Luo suddenly asked in a low voice. The light shadow stopped. It hovered in front of Boss Luo. Gradually, the light on its body became softer and its appearance could be vaguely seen. It was a little elf. It was like a very, very small girl that could be described as cute. "I understand." Boss Luo nodded and then said indifferently, "But if you want to get the person out of the abyss, you need to let him strip off all the disguises and directly face the most profound ones. Is that okay?" "Maybe that's not what he wants to face. If you do it again, it may be more painful." The little elf's body flashed. Boss Luo sighed slowly. He stretched out his hand and took the little elf into his palm. Then, he looked at the people under the ruins. Interestingly, the people under the ruins belonged to the original people of Wally Castle. Dr. Gores, Mr. Sneeve, Tina, and Wally himself. Except for them, there were no outsiders, or except for these outsiders, there were no people who originally belonged to this world. Since all this started from the game of the chessboard, Boss Luo's voice sounded slowly. Then, let's end it from the game of the chessboard. He snapped his fingers lightly. "Gores, let me go." She didn't even call Dr. Gores respectfully. Instead, she called him by his name. Tina was struggling hard. Dr. Gores was nothing in front of the truly powerful professionals in the world of the chessboard, but his ability as a servant was far from Tina's. However, Miss Tina was seriously injured by the sword light's sword aura. Sometimes spiritual dependence is the most poisonous poison. Dr. Jurls said softly at this time, "That's a disease that even doctors can't cure. It's a disease that is difficult to cure. But look carefully, look carefully. The person you rely on is now walking towards the end that no one can save. Let me go. Tina roared at Dr. Gores fiercely. She even grabbed his arm and bit it. She bit his arm and stared at Dr. Gores. Without a doubt, this was a pain that needed to be avoided. However, at this time, Dr. Giles acted as though the arm that was bitten by Dolly was not his own. He calmly looked at Tina's beast-like eyes. No, no. Tina suddenly let go of Dr. Gores as if she was afraid of something. Her voice trembled. She shook her head and stepped back. No, don't do this. She looked at Sneeve. Mr. Sneeve had already arrived in front of young Wally. He raised his weapon and held it tightly with both hands. No, she screamed. In the scream, young Wally, who was nailed to the ground and couldn't move, looked at the sharp blade falling toward him. He suddenly glowed with a trace of madness and roared. Sneeve! His voice was like that of a ferocious beast. Facing the young Wally's roar, Snake's raised blade suddenly froze. Do you think that by killing me, you can erase what you have done? You can't. You can't ever. Young Wally laughed crazily. I'll remember. Even if I die, even if my soul decays, as long as my spirit doesn't completely erase, I'll still remember that cowardly, despicable, and dirty hunter. That's right, you're that dirty. Do you think that by killing me, you can avenge your companions? No, you can't, because you're just a dirty, despicable soul, a scum who is only fit to live far, far away in a world that stinks like a sewer, humbly gasping for breath. The sharp blade in his hand fell from Sneeve's hands. He stood in front of young Wally with dim eyes, as if he had lost his soul. Dr. Gores opened his mouth subconsciously. The maid Tina was very nervous at this time. She saw the sharp blade falling slowly. Clang! It fell to the ground, making such a sound. The instant the sound rang out, there seemed to be another sound that rang out at the same time. It sounded like someone had snapped their fingers. Clang! His arm accidentally knocked down the cup beside him. In front of the chessboard, the young hunter was looking at the broken glass on the ground helplessly. What happened, Sneeve? An intellectual and mature woman beside him frowned at this moment. It could be seen that this intellectual and mature woman's face was filled with nervousness at this moment. However, the young hunter didn't dare to look at this mature and gentle face. He lowered his head, as if he wanted to hide something in his eyes. Nothing. I'm fine, I was just careless. Lenny, what's the matter? A mature woman. As the only magician in the demon hunting team, she quickly responded, but her eyes were still fixed on the grid of the chessboard. Their demon hunting team was facing an extremely difficult and dangerous battle. The chessboard challenge from the owner of the castle. Their mental defense had been broken by the horror and strangeness of the chessboard. Now, every step they took was so frightening and careful. They were afraid that if they made a wrong move, they would be doomed eternally. Lenny, that day, the young hunter seemed to be thinking of something. The mature and beautiful magician finally looked at him calmly. Sneeve, that's not something worth remembering, and I won't blame you for it. Remember, what we need to do now is to win this game. Focus. How about Gerald? Is he safe? If I have 2 more missions, I should be able to let Sheila and Gerald meet. At that time, it will be more convenient for them to communicate with each other. No problem. I'm here, the young hunter said quickly. Then he calmed down and focused on the chessboard game again. However, as long as he focused on the chessboard game, he would inevitably make eye contact with his opponents in this game. In addition to the owner of the castle, the demon hunting team's opponents were the family doctor of the castle, the strange twin maids, and a taciturn butler. Of course, there was also a group of tall and straight bodyguards surrounding the corridor on the 2nd floor. Suddenly, the young hunter met the eyes of the owner of the castle. The young hunter seemed to see a smile in the owner's eyes. He couldn't help but be startled. You're Sneeve, right? The voice rang in the young hunter's ears the moment they made eye contact. The young hunter was shocked. He subconsciously looked at Lenny beside him, but he found that Lenny didn't seem to hear anything. She was only paying attention to the chessboard game. Don't panic and don't make a fuss. I just want to talk to you alone, that's all. Of course, you can refuse. This was the voice of the owner of the castle. The young hunter frowned, but didn't have any excessive reaction. It seems that you're going to listen to me. What a smart guy. The young hunter stared at the owner of the castle, and for the first time, his eyes showed anger other than fear. I like your eyes, powerful and spirited. The young hunter opened his mouth, but didn't say anything. He seemed to want to say, what do you want to do? Let's make a deal. As long as you agree, I promise you can get what you want and even survive in this game. I won't kill you, and I'll let you live. The young hunter couldn't help but widen his eyes. What do you think? What are the chances of winning? I played this game so many times that I can't even count it. I'm familiar with the contents of each grid. I can even directly kill you at the beginning of the game. But that's too boring because my life has just begun. I need some fun to kill the boring time. It seems that you're hesitating? Then how about this? I'll not only let you go, but I'll also let the female magician go. I'll let both of you go. You like this female magician very much, right? Crush. Seems like it. Let me guess, to have a crush on an excellent woman, and this woman has an equally excellent lover. It must be very painful for you, right? This pain will even torment you, right? You may have thought that if she doesn't have this lover, you may have a chance. Oh, you say, will you hide outside this beautiful magician's door and eavesdrop on her movements? But she's enjoying the pleasure of her body with her lover? This will be even more painful for you. Will there be such a time? You might even steal her belongings, personal belongings, or even her clothes. What do you want to do? What you want to do is to do something lowly that can let you vent. For example, use these clothes to violate her. The young hunter's expression gradually became awkward. He felt that the eyes of the owner of the castle peeled off his entire body, making it difficult for him to breathe. It seems that I've guessed correctly. Young hunter. The young hunter clenched his fists tightly at this time. So, you really don't want to consider my request. Is it that handsome swordsman? He will die in there. The lover of the woman you have a crush on will die in there. From now on, no one will stand between you and her. More importantly, you will be able to protect her life. The young hunter took a deep breath. He stared at the owner of the castle and didn't say anything. He just silently took the dice for throwing. This was his turn. We will definitely go and win this game, the young hunter said in a deep voice. This was his response. Well said. We will definitely win. The female magician, Lainey, nodded heavily at this time. She seemed to be infected by the fighting spirit of this little boy, and she also had a new fighting spirit. After all, he was just a kid. Even if he did that strange thing, it was just a moment of impulse. A teenager with excessive hormones would always do something like this. Maybe I should have a good talk with this kid after this. I've been avoiding this embarrassing thing before. What a comforting sight. The owner of the castle smiled at this time. He slowly picked up the cup filled with blood and saluted to the two masters of the demon hunting team. To the first loser. What? The young hunter was shocked. Tashira! The female magician shouted in horror at this time. In the chessboard, the card of the warrior of the demon hunting team who came to the chessboard as a servant suddenly burned and disappeared. How could it be? I dodged it. The female magician suddenly sat down on the ground. Tashira, At the same time, a bloody roulette slowly appeared above the chessboard. The young hunter looked at the blood-red roulette in horror and said, Lainey, run. I can't move. I can't move. The female magician couldn't help but say in horror. The young hunter desperately rushed forward and stood in front of Lainey. Even if I die, what I said just now is still valid. The owner of the ancient castle instantly interrupted the young hunter's words. He opened his arms and smiled. Make me happy. Please me as much as you want. Use your most despicable actions to please me, and I'll fulfill your wish and even let you go. What do you want me to do? The young hunter couldn't help but ask in a trembling voice. Lainey looked at the back of the young hunter with horror, saying absent-mindedly, Sneeve, don't be bewitched by the demon. Don't. What do you want me to do? The young hunter roared. The owner of the castle raised his hands. Have a party. Entertain me with a despicable and filthy carnival. Let me see how filthy you really are. Young hunter, follow the most primitive desire in your heart, and possess this woman. Now, this is the last chance. I'll only stop this roulette for a while, before I change my mind, or maybe the next moment. The young hunter subconsciously turned his head and looked at the helpless female magician sitting behind him. Don't. Sneeve, don't. You'll regret it. It's all a lie. Laney-eyed, he turned around and looked down at the weak and pale mature woman. I've always. Laney-eye, Sneeve. She shouted his name. He suddenly pounced on her and tore her clothes apart like a wild beast. Everything was so violent and crazy. Believe me, I just want to save you. Yes, I just want to save you. I really just want to save you. The female magician seemed to have lost her soul. She looked at the punishment roulette above her head blankly. Her body didn't seem to be her body anymore, even if it was suffering from some terrible things. Around them, several pairs of eyes were looking at the scene beside the chessboard. Some were interested, some were indifferent, and some were calm. Mr. Varley's bad taste is really... But speaking of which, this guy's quite rich. So boring, this woman didn't even resist. Master, do you need fresh blood grapes? It's almost lunchtime, I'll prepare it. Well, today is really a happy day. They were chatting casually, watching the demon hunter's last struggle. Chapter 1894. It was like a dream. Reality and illusion were intertwined. In the joy, in the pain, in the numbness, and also under the drive of instinct. This was really like a dream. If possible, he would rather wake up at this moment. It was a demonic stare that came from all around him. The young hunter was like an empty shell, paralyzed on the cold floor. Beside him, the female magician Laney was like a broken mirror that was hit by all the nightmares. It was as if he could see her split body, her eyes. Humiliation, grief, despair, and emptiness in her eyes. I suddenly found that it is not as interesting as I thought. The voice of the owner of the castle sounded again. It instantly provoked the young hunter's extremely fragile nerves. The young hunter subconsciously raised his head and met the indifferent and ruthless eyes of the owner of the castle. It was as if the owner was looking at an insignificant insect. Oh, it suddenly became interesting again. The owner of the castle suddenly showed a smile on his face. The young hunter seemed to have noticed something from the owner's playful eyes. He almost used up all his courage and suddenly turned his head. Laney, don't. He screamed, don't. At some point, the female magician sat up and raised a dagger in her hands. It was a dagger that she kept close to her body. Hearing the young hunter's scream, the female magician glanced at him expressionlessly. In that moment, Laney didn't hesitate and directly stabbed her own throat with the dagger she held high. Don't! Amidst a piercing scream, she directly fell to the ground, turning into a shattered mirror. The young hunter pitifully and fearfully crawled to the side of the female magician. Her face didn't even have a trace of pain. Her eyes were even calm. Even after death, she was so calm. She looked at him calmly, as if saying, "Please don't touch me again." The young hunter held his head with both hands. But at this time, the bloody roulette suddenly turned. A beam of bloody light directly shot to the female magician's lifeless body. The next moment, she disappeared from the chessboard. The young hunter knelt down on the ground in a daze. Beside the chessboard, the masters of the ancient castle were like dark mountains to him. They circled him, surrounded him so that he could advance or retreat, and looked at him mockingly, to see which of them was the ugliest of him. You promised me that you would let her go. You lied to me. In fact, I didn't even move. The owner of the castle indifferently said, from the beginning to the end, I didn't move a step. She killed herself. You saw it with your own eyes, didn't you? I'll kill you. The young hunter desperately rushed to the owner of the castle. How could he be the opponent of the powerful vampire nobleman? The owner didn't even need the owner of the castle. The servant beside the owner, only one blow, the young hunter. It was the family doctor in the castle who made the move. The young hunter fell on the ground and kept vomiting. The family doctor squatted beside the young hunter, squinting his eyes and smiling. Don't do it. I'm very good at dismembering. The young hunter looked at the family doctor with a smile and fear. The family doctor, Dr. Gores, gave him the dice for action at this time, and said with a chuckle, "Come, congratulations on getting the qualification of survivor. Now, let's end this game." The young hunter stared at the dice in his hand. His hand was trembling. "Sneeve, can you hear me? Sneeve, how are you doing outside? I've been here for a long time. Did something happen? Sneeve, can you hear what I'm saying? Something happened to me in the hometown of elves. I met a guard captain of the temple, Cold." That was the voice of the servant who partnered with the young hunter. But he gradually couldn't hear his servant's voice. He was afraid to hear his voice, afraid to hear the voice of Lenny's lover. What was Geralt saying? What did he want to say? Listen clearly. Don't want to listen. Don't want to listen. Don't want to listen. And don't want to pay attention. Sneeve, say something. What happened in the end? Did something happen? Where is Lenny? Sneeve, answer me. So annoying. Sneeve, can you hear my voice? Sneeve. It's really annoying. The young hunter's hand was still trembling. In front of him, the family doctor was closer, whispering in his ear. Mr. Varley promised to let you go, so you just need to let your servant team up with our servant, and you'll be safe. But I don't know if your servant will come out alive and know what happened. The young hunter's eyes suddenly shrank. Gerald's voice continued to ring in his ear. In fact, there's a way to avoid this kind of thing. As long as your servant encounters some accidents and can't come out, as long as you let your servant go to the second grid in the upper left corner of the roaring forest, it won't exceed 6 action points. If you're lucky, you can even do it with 1 roll. The young hunter's hand trembled even more. The young hunter looked at them blankly, and he found that the people in the castle in front of him once again showed that kind of look. They exchanged a few words with each other. Don't listen to him. Wait for your companion to come out alive. As long as you push all the blame on us, then you're just a victim. You don't even need to say anything. It's enough to make your companion full of hatred for us. It's already full of hatred. If it were me, I wouldn't leave this trouble. Friendship or something, of course. Your own life is more precious. Not to mention that you've already made such a despicable betrayal. It's just wishful thinking to beg for forgiveness. How can this be? Your intention is good. As long as you confess to your companion, he will definitely forgive you. It was like they were thinking about the young hunter. Their voices. The young hunter trembled, stretched out his hand little by little, and wanted to throw the die into the chessboard. He couldn't hear anything, let alone see those eyes that were looking at him. The die was a little closer to the chessboard. As long as he opened his palm, there would be a decisive roll. Me? My name is Tashira. The work of carrying luggage will be handed over to you, newcomer. Why do you have to think of me at this time? Geralt, swordsman, welcome to our team. You're young, but I can see your courage in your eyes. Sneeve, this is the name I will remember for a lifetime. You heard it this time. Laney, magician. By the way, your face is red. Isn't it cute? You heard it again. Sneeve, are you okay? That was the voice of the deceased Laney, like a tide, gently rising in the young hunter's heart. At the moment when the ripple spread, the fingers that were about to let go suddenly clenched. The young hunter held the die in his hand tightly, but didn't throw it. He raised his head, staring at the owner of the castle with boundless anger and deadly realization. Demon, go to hell. Yes, I've given you a chance. The owner of the castle shook his head. He didn't even want to make a move. He just signaled to the maid beside him. One of the maids of the twins walked out. It was unknown whether it was the elder sister or the younger sister. She simply and easily pierced the young hunter's heart with her hand. He fell to the ground, his eyes gradually dimming. Vaguely, he saw a bloody roulette appear in front of him, and the smiling face of the maid who was licking the blood on her fingers. Many bloody arms came out from the roulette. At this moment, the young hunter exhausted the last bit of strength in his life, reaching out his hands, reaching out to them. I didn't throw it. I don't have it this time. He seemed to smile. Clang, clang. The sharp blade that fell to the ground slightly bounced after the first collision, and then hit the floor again, making a sound of its collision. As her voice rose and fell, the heavily injured maid, Tina, suddenly opened her mouth. In the midst of the disorientation, She said subconsciously, "What was that just now?" She found that Dr. Gores beside her also had the same expression at this moment. In the past, Dr. Gores shook his head. He was puzzled and even more inconceivable. Why at this time, suddenly? "Wally." Mr. Sneeve's voice sounded again. It was so resolute, so sharp, and so firm. He picked up the sharp blade on the ground and lifted it up. "See," Mr. Sneeve shouted at this time, "I didn't do as you wish. You devil, did you see that? My choice. I didn't throw it." The raised sharp blade finally pierced into young Wally's heart. Young Wally also had a trace of confusion at this time. Mr. Sneeve instantly twisted the handle of the blade, and a strange distortion suddenly spread on young Wally's face. Young Wally's cheeks twitched. His eyes were looking at Sneeve's eyes. His lips trembled, as if he wanted to squeeze out some words from the depths of his throat. But in the end, no sound came out. There were only intermittent sounds, like the sound of a water pump not being able to produce water. "I didn't kill my companion." Mr. Sneeve exerted force again, and the sharp blade pierced deeper into young Wally's body. "This is really, really imperfect, and young Wally's eyes dimmed little by little. "I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I don't want to die." Like an extinguished wick extinguished. "Master Puff." The frightened maid scratched her face with both hands and let out an ear-piercing scream. Suddenly, Tina rushed out with a weapon in her hand, as if she had gone mad. Dr. Gores didn't stop her, but calmly watched all this happen, until the weapon in Tina's hand pierced Sneeve's chest from his back. "Chi!" She pulled out the weapon, and then pierced it again. "Chi!" She pulled out the weapon again, and then pierced it again and again, until Mr. Sneeve finally fell in a pool of blood. Tina threw away the weapon in her hand and directly rushed to young Wally, shaking his body hard. The owner of the castle didn't give any response to his servant girl. He had no breath, no heartbeat, no life, just like a corpse. But his body was still nailed to the pillar by the sword light. It was like an execution pillar. She wanted to pull the sword light away, but dozens of terrible wounds were cut on her arms in an instant. Dr. Gores shook his head and walked to Tina in a flash. He lightly hit her from behind and directly knocked the servant girl unconscious. The doctor looked back at Mr. Sneeve in the pool of blood, frowning, and muttered, "Although I don't know how the dream came about, I have to make a throw. Maybe it's the last and most insignificant redemption for the young hunter in the dream. Although it's just a dream. You can rest in peace, Sneeve." Dr. Gores said, but he felt something was approaching. But he didn't find anything when he looked around. He shook his head and directly carried Tina's body. He glanced at the young Wally for the last time and directly left without saying anything. A small light shadow flew from afar and stopped beside Mr. Sneeve. The small light shadow grew little by little and gradually turned into a human figure, a female figure. Within the hazy darkness, the only thing he could see was a glowing figure. It seemed to be the figure that he had dreamed of countless times, the figure and face that he had secretly watched countless times in his dreams. "Is that you, Lenny?" The female figure slowly approached the old and ugly body in the pool of blood. "Lenny, are you here to pick me up?" It quietly stood beside Mr. Snakel, silently looking at him. Suddenly, the female figure gradually split. It split into two more figures. Three shimmering silhouettes with blurry faces stood beside the old hunter in the pool of blood. "Tosira and Gerald." The old hunter's face showed a trace of hope and relief. "You also came to pick me up. That's great." The old hunter smiled, and that was the last bit of strength left in his life. He stretched out his hand with difficulty. The three shimmering figures also stretched out their hands to him at the same time. In the contact of hands, the old hunter only felt that his body became lighter. He seemed to be flying. They wrapped around him and took him to the sky little by little and took him away. He gradually became serene. "I finally see you again." He wanted to see his companions' faces clearly again. At the last moment of his life, he tried hard not to stop his thoughts at this moment. Finally, he succeeded in seeing the faces of the figures of light. They were indeed faces that he was familiar with. Tosiera looked at him expressionlessly. Gerald looked at him expressionlessly. Lenny looked at him expressionlessly. It was the same gaze when she killed herself, the same gaze. Looking at him, they all let go of their hands at the same time. No, don't. The moment they let go, Sneeve only felt that his body fell rapidly. He fell from their hold, falling into the abyss. They looked at him expressionlessly. No, don't give up on me. Don't give up on me. Don't give up on me. In a flash, he suddenly understood that they didn't want to take him away. They just wanted to throw him into this terrible abyss. From a beginning to the end, legend has it that only the purest of the soul can see the forest elves. Then, have you seen the forest elves, Sneeve? I can't see. Not everyone. Boss Luo slowly opened his palm in the wind. A small light flew from afar and fell into his palm again. Is qualified to be redeemed. This is what you want. The small light was now in Boss Luo's palm, breaking little by little. When it peeled off all the outer shells, only a small remnant of starlight was left. Finally, the starlight turned into a small olive stone. What is this? Araya in white asked with a little curiosity. Boss Luo rubbed her head and said softly, "It's something they think is worth keeping. The days of adventure are very interesting." Reward? Araya in white analyzed calmly. Boss Luo just smiled and said nothing. Chapter 1895. No one would care about what happened in this corner. Even if they knew what happened here, they wouldn't care. Because the world was going through the most terrible thing. A huge shadow completely covered the once prosperous King City. What is this world going through? She silently looked at the huge white ape's figure that covered the sky. Perhaps because it was too big, its originally white fur now looked grayish-black. One step, two steps. She seemed to be walking towards somewhere very slowly. In front of her was a ruin. If she hadn't lived here for so many years and was familiar with everything here, she might not be able to find the way. An old man standing in a pool of blood stood in front of her. This old man's face was distorted. Even though he was no longer breathing, his eyes were still open. He opened his mouth wide as if he was trying to shout something before he died. This old man's arms stretched to the sky, but he couldn't catch anything. This was a very desperate way to die. Probably. What is your world going through? She just glanced at it casually and then didn't pay attention to it. All her attention was on a half-broken pillar in front of her. Young Wally's body was still hanging on this half-broken pillar by the sword light. She silently came to young Wally, stretched out her hands, and cupped young Wally's face. Looking at this face with closed eyes and a trace of childishness, she smiled. "Since you can't take me away from this world, then stay with me forever," she said softly. Her hands that were holding his cheeks suddenly exerted some strength as if she was opening a lid. She actually pulled young Wally's head out from his neck. Almost half of the spine had been pulled out. She held up the head with half of the spine, and her face revealed a joyful smile. She hugged the bloody head as if she was hugging a human. She hummed a song as if she was dancing in the flower field. Blood was dripping. A gentle ray of light wrapped around the flying devil and slowly sent it to the ground. At this time, the three godly weapons of the world had already entered the palms of the golden-armored general. This was a giant. If not for the sky-covering white ape, Mo sang. The size of the golden-armored general was enough to cause people to feel awe at the sight of it. The flying monster was as small as a mouse under the golden-armored general's feet, shivering. "You're going to shoot this soul arrow?" Nan Xiaonan hurriedly shouted when she landed on the ground. This was different from what she had expected. If the existence of the three godly weapons was the last resistance left by the invading world, it was the last hope to fight against the chessboard. Then, according to convention, this soul arrow that represented the last hope and resistance should be shot out by the child of the world. In other words, she chose Jillian. How could it be King Amos? But the three godly weapons had fallen into the hands of King Amos. With her current ability and current conditions, she obviously couldn't take back the three godly weapons from King Amos. The golden armored general didn't respond to Nan Xiaonan's words. It just stretched out its arm. Suddenly, A longbow that matched its size appeared out of thin air and was equipped on the golden armor general's hand. This was the enlarged version of total annihilation. At the same time, two huge lights appeared beside the golden armor general. They were two weapons. They were the enlarged Aurora's Aster and devouring 10,000 spell snake. The golden armor general, or King Amos, who had merged with it, reached out and grabbed the enlarged snake devourer of all spells. Using it as an arrow, he slowly placed it on the enlarged total annihilation. It took a step forward and its whole body sank down. Then it suddenly exerted force and pulled the total annihilation open, pointing the sword at the sky, the white ape that covered the sky. It really pulled it open? Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but open her mouth. She seemed to be puzzled, but more than that, she was in disbelief. But why didn't I react? And Jillian also? But the golden armor general who pulled the bow didn't say anything, and Nan Xiaonan was also full of doubts. However, when the golden armor general pulled the bowstring of total annihilation, it seemed to be extremely strenuous. It could only pull it open bit by bit. It was like a long process. Lady Nan, you just said, I have a special relationship with him. Jillian stared blankly at the golden armor general who was bending over and pulling the bow and asked subconsciously, what kind of relationship is it? I don't know, I'm just guessing. Nan Xiaonan said quickly, but there are still some details that I haven't completely understood because the time doesn't match. Time? How old are you this year? Nan Xiaonan asked directly. Almost 18. I still have half a year, Ji Lian answered subconsciously. That's it. Lady Nan nodded. I speculate, or rather, many facts are supporting one thing. The woman hidden in the crystal pillar under the weapon shop, Ismira, is very likely your mother. But, logically speaking, she should have passed away 20 years ago, and I heard that when she passed away, she was already pregnant with a child. That's why I said that the time doesn't match. She's my mother. I can only say that it's possible, very possible. Nan Xiaonan shook her head. But there is indeed a split in the time. Jillian is indeed Esmira's child. At this moment, a sigh was heard. It was the voice of Sacred Swordsman Rivero. From afar, Sacred Swordsman Rivero's figure appeared in front of Jillian and Nan Xiaonan along with his voice. That's because Esmira didn't die immediately after being pushed into the abyss by Queen Hilda. Every descendant of our Highland royal family will form a contract with a natal monster when they are born. Esmira's monster sacrificed itself in the end and froze Esmira in a half-dead state. It's you, Lord Rivero. Jillian looked at the sacred swordsman in surprise, who disappeared after throwing him a sword soul beast. It was also this sacred swordsman who carried him back to the weapon shop from the broken sword tomb at the bottom of the lake. In other words, the secret treasure that Max stole from the Dragon Clan was indeed the crystallized Esmira. Nan Xiaonan slapped her forehead. Then what about Jillian? Sacred Swordsman Rivero sighed. After Max risked his life to bring Esmira out, we tried many methods but still couldn't save her and the child in her belly. But in the end, Esmira was willing to give up her last chance to live and share it with this child. 3 years after Max escaped from the Dragon Clan, this child was born. That child is you, Jillian. Jillian was stunned. Rivero looked at him and said seriously, Listen, I don't know how long it will take for you to accept all this. This is supposed to be something that you can accept and understand bit by bit. But our world is facing the most terrible crisis. One wrong step, and we may not have a tomorrow. So I can only tell you all this directly. There is no step-by-step and no pre-rehearsal. This world is undergoing changes that no one can react to, and everything is in chaos. You can't even find something that can make you feel at ease in this terrible situation. Jillian, Sacred Swordsman said in a deep voice, Listen, your mother was once the princess of the kingdom of Cadiz and the saintess of the Highlanders. And your father is now King Amos of the kingdom of Elnis. You have the blood of the Highlanders and the Guardians flowing in your body. Guardians? Nan Xiaonan frowned subconsciously. Sacred Swordsman said calmly. Otherwise, why is it King Amos and not other kings? Why is it that only the royal bloodline of this country can start the summoning ritual? Because from the beginning, this is the chosen race. At this moment, two more figures arrived. They were slower than Rivero. They were peace between man and nature and Tianyan Xan. So, you're not only a descendant of the Highlanders. Peace between man and nature looked at Jillian with a complicated expression. But you're also my aunt's child. It's drawn. Nan Xiaonan cried out nervously. He really drew. Total annihilation. The giant total annihilation in the golden-armored general's hand was fully drawn. A huge gray vortex started to gather at the tip of the giant total annihilation serpent. It expanded. As it expanded, the small vortex eventually turned into a nebula. The first arrow, devouring arrow. With a loud cry, the golden-armored general released the bowstring in his hand. Yang Jiandash, the furious and heaven-like voice, even covered the thunderbolts flashing in the endless demon clouds. It was Mo Sang's voice, Yuan Hong's voice. Perhaps it wasn't as furious as the voice sounded, but its huge body amplified its voice. Even if it wasn't furious, its earth-shaking voice sounded like the wrath of the heavens. Supported by a gentle light, Tang Tianlin floated above the red, demonic cloud. Under the clear blue sky without the cover of the demonic cloud, Tang Tianlin was like a small boat in the vast sea. You've lost your physical body and only have your primordial spirit left. The new artifact spirit of the Mountain River map is under my control. How can you fight with me? The Mountain River map belongs to Empress Hua. Tang Tianlin's voice sounded slowly. Yuan Hong, you stole Empress Hua's item. Aren't you afraid that she will wake up from her slumber in the River of Time? Don't try to scare me. The sect master of the GS sect has his ways. If I can successfully take away the Mountain River map, it will be a great achievement. The huge white ape standing on the ground slapped down with its palm. For Tang Tianlin, who was only moving around as Tang Tianlin, there was no way he could dodge the palm that was as big as a mountain range. Facing such a terrifying attack, Tang Tianlin waved his hand, and 9 small stone fragments flew out from his left palm. These fragments were all taken from Gong Sun Eryang, and 2 of them were taken from the young man by Gong Sun Eryang. Less than 1/10 of it. Tang Tianlin frowned, looking like a housewife who couldn't cook without rice. He looked up and saw the huge palm slapping down, and a divine light flashed in his eyes. The 3 golden eyes on his forehead shone brightly. With a sudden wave of his hand, Tang Tianlin slapped away the 9 stone fragments in front of him. Mountain River Lock. The 9 stone fragments that were sent flying instantly turned into 9 flashes of light and rushed into the sky. At the same time, the surroundings of each fragment began to distort. 1 golden chain after another emerged from the 9 stone fragments. The so-called Mountain River Lock was currently manifesting at an extreme speed. They were like spirit snakes, coiling around the gigantic white ape's palm at the same time. Tight! This incomparably huge palm slammed down and instantly disrupted the continuous red, demonic clouds. However, before the demonic clouds could disperse, the palm was forcibly stopped by the chains of the Mountain and River Lock. Yang Jian, is this all you've got? But the voice of Mo's Yuan Hong sounded again like the might of the heavens. In an instant, the blue sky thundered. The hand that was bound by the lock of mountains and rivers struggled hard and broke the 9 metal chains in an instant. Tang Tianlin frowned. It seemed that he didn't have a good way to deal with the huge palm at this time. Seeing that the huge palm was about to fall, Tang Tianlin's body would probably be smashed into pieces under the impact. Yang Jian, who was hiding in Tang Tianlin's body, couldn't help but think of avoiding the attack. It wasn't a shameful thing. He should retreat when it was time to retreat. It had always been like this in wars. He was a general in the War of Gods. However, at the moment when Yang Jian thought of retreating temporarily, he saw a gray light with a vortex like a galaxy rushing straight from the ground. The sudden appearance of the light directly shot through the huge palm that was falling down, When the gray light shot through the huge palm of Mosen, Yuan Hong, something strange happened. The huge palm, which was as big as a mountain range, directly collapsed under the light. It was like gently hitting a rock that had been weathered for thousands of years. In an instant, not only the palm, but half of the white ape's arm also collapsed completely. Tang Tianlin felt like he was in the middle of a storm of falling rocks. Above it, there was the angry roar of Mosen Yuan Hong, who had half of his arm shot off. Seeing this, Tang Tianlin instantly wiped his finger on the third golden eye on his forehead and then stared at the ground under the demon cloud. His sight penetrated layer by layer and pulled closer. Finally, it fell on the golden general. A rare smile appeared on Tang Tianlin's face. My hard work was not in vain. I helped you to fully control this yellow-turban strongman made by Kunlun. I just don't know how long you can hold on. You don't know what death is. Mo's Yuan Hong, who sounded like he was about to lose his temper, angrily slapped out with his other hand. This slap was aimed at the ground. Yuan Hong, didn't you want me to be your opponent? Seeing this, Tang Tianlin, who originally wanted to retreat, summoned the lock of mountains and rivers again. It's not over yet. The lock of mountains and rivers directly wrapped around the white ape's other arm. Not only that, but Tang Tianlin also burst out with a monstrous fighting spirit at this moment. Perhaps in terms of absolute power, the true lord relying on Tang Tianlin's body was completely incomparable to Mo's Yuan Hong at this time. However, in terms of pure will, they were actually competing with each other, not giving way to each other. Yang Jian, Yuan Hong's angry voice sounded again. However, at this time, on the ground, the golden-armored general had already grabbed the enlarged aster of Aurora and placed it on the bowstring as an arrow. King Amos pulled the bowstring again. Bright like fireworks, the sharp arrow formed by the snake that devours all spells directly exploded after piercing through the white ape's palm. The chessboard game. The chessboard is indeed like a chessboard. I'm more willing to narrowly call it the chessboard instead of the mountain and rivers diagram. Every single person on the chessboard had a fixed role to play. Only when all of them were united could they decide the final outcome of the game. When the chess pieces are counted in the end, they can either lose all or win by half. Waves of light shone on the faces of Boss Luo and White Araya. At this time, Boss Luo said in a calm voice, when the new and old wheels of the chessboard collide with each other and compete for the control of the chessboard, resulting in a vacuum in the control of this subworld, it's time for you to regain control of this subworld. Can you seize the opportunity? I'm calculating. White Araya's eyes flashed. Boss Luo smiled faintly and rubbed White Araya's little head, saying softly, "Do your best. If you succeed, I'll treat you to candy." He didn't know if it was an illusion or not. White Araya only felt that his super-fast calculation was almost messed up because of Boss Luo's words. Chapter 1896. The nebula-like vortex once again appeared before the total annihilation, pulled by the golden-armored general, and this time it was the Aurora's aster that was about to be shot out as an arrow. It was effective. The snake that devours all spells that was shot out was indeed effective. The white ape's body that was countless times larger than a mountain actually had half of its arm shot off. This was an arrow that was comparable to the power of the world's limit. Back then, how were these three divine weapons forged? Seeing this, even though Nan Xiaonan was experienced and knowledgeable, she could not help but marvel at the craftsman who forged these three divine weapons. It seemed to be the first owner of Locke's weapon shop, the ancestor of her late father. Max, legend has it that the three divine weapons were forged by the legendary craftsman Back, then using the bodies of three gods that perished during the Golden Age as raw materials. Sword Saintly Yuluo said in a deep voice, "Instead of saying that the three divine weapons have the power to destroy dragons, it would be more accurate to say that it is because of the resentment of the gods attached to the divine weapons towards the dragons that rebelled during the Golden Age that they have such a high damage attribute to the dragons. But in the end, it is still the power of the gods. The so-called gods of this world. Nan Xiaonan nodded as if she suddenly understood. No wonder it has such a degree of power. But why can't I pull it? However, this degree of power could only be released once. This snake that devours all spells had already exploded after it was shot out, probably completely exhausting all of its hidden power. What's wrong with him? At this moment, Ji Lian's voice sounded among the crowd. Everyone subconsciously looked up, only to see that the golden armored general who was in the midst of activating 10-direction total annihilation for the second time didn't seem to be affected. Even the second 10-direction total annihilation was about to be fully activated, and Aurora's Aster was about to be shot out. However, soon, many cracks suddenly appeared on the golden armored general's body. Its legs were even suddenly bent down, and it had to kneel on one knee. The total annihilation was now constantly trembling in the golden armored general's hand. It seemed to be unable to completely stabilize the apocalypse that was about to be unleashed. Nan Xiaonan looked at Ji Lian in surprise, then frowned and speculated. King Amos doesn't seem to be able to completely suppress the power of the second arrow. Or rather, the first arrow is his limit. How could this be? Ji Lian couldn't help but reveal a worried expression. If the second arrow couldn't be completed, a sense of despair began to appear in everyone's hearts. But at this moment, the frown on peace between man and nature suddenly relaxed. In this silence, his voice rang out very loudly. What is that? Nan Xiaonan looked in the direction that peace between man and nature was pointing at. After being stunned for a moment, she said, "That's Fat Pig Carol? F***CK. You don't know better than me, you useless princess." Peace between man and nature took a deep breath and said seriously, "Since she is the descendant of King Amos, then she is no longer a useless princess." With that, peace between man and nature flashed and walked to the unconscious Princess Carol. He grabbed the useless princess's collar with one hand and then threw her over with great force. "What are you planning to do?" Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but frown, but she seemed to have thought of something. Peace between man and nature didn't answer. Instead, he quickly returned and looked directly at sacred swordsman Liu Luo. He said directly, "Teacher, Princess Carol, do you have any other uses?" Sacred swordsman frowned. "At first, we discussed with Yamos that after all this is over, Ji Lian will appear as the champion of this competition. He will officially become one of the heirs of this country through marriage with Carol. Of course, the marriage is just a pretense. Yamos will probably imprison Princess Carol until she dies. However, all of this happened too quickly, and it completely disrupted our previous arrangements. Now that it has come to this, it is no longer something that any of us could have predicted beforehand." Peace between man and nature subconsciously looked at Ji Lian. Nan Xiaonan also looked at Ji Lian with a strange gaze. Only Ji Lian was at a loss. Just as sacred swordsman Liu Luo said, at this terrible moment, everything would be peeled away from him, and he wouldn't have any time to react. He could only passively accept these things that were originally very far away from him. In the end, you let your real child become the king of the world. Peace between man and nature shook his head and looked sideways at Ji Lian. He sneered and said, "You guys, it seems that you have never asked for the child's opinion before deciding his future. He is the child of Yamos and Esmira," Sacred Swordsman said in a low voice. "He was born unable to avoid these things." Peace between man and nature snorted. "It is precisely because he is my aunt's child. Otherwise, forget it. I don't want to discuss these issues. This world is about to be gone, so the so-called kingdom is no longer important. In that case, I will use this useless princess now." With that, peace between man and nature directly lifted Princess Carol and jumped directly into the Kingdom Guardian's awakening ritual array. He directly pulled Princess Carol's arm and cut her wrist without saying a word. "You want to—" In an instant, Nan Xiaonan understood peace between man and nature's plan. Since summoning the Kingdom Guardian requires the bloodline of the kingdom. Since one bloodline is not enough, let's use two. Peace between man and nature said in a low voice. There is nothing that cannot be solved with two bloodlines. But this is just a guess, right? Nan Xiaonan could not help but ask in surprise. What if the summoning is only a one-time use and cannot be stacked? The world is about to be gone, so we have to try everything. Peace between man and nature said indifferently. If it doesn't work, we will think of other ways. This is the only way I can think of to use this princess. And it seems that my luck is not bad. Blood. The princess' blood flowed into the formation and was instantly absorbed by the formation runes. With a large amount of blood flowing in, the entire ritual array seemed to be activated again. A beam of light shot out from the array and directly entered the body of the golden-armored general. As if it had obtained a new life, its collapsed body instantly solidified. With the support of the new life, the golden-armored general stood up again. With a roar, the total annihilation activated, and the second arrow was instantly pointed to the sky. Climb, climb, climb like a rocket. The huge white ape, whose movements were restricted by the mountain river lock, twisted its body under the rapidly climbing light. But how huge was its body? The second arrow could probably hit it even if it was shot blindly. The nebula-like vortex directly pierced through the huge white ape's entire shoulder. The power of the arrow shot by the total annihilation, combined with the total annihilation, had been tested by Boss Luo once in front of people, and that was when the total annihilation did not explode. Now, just like the serpent that devours all spells, the total annihilation also released all the hidden power at once without reservation. This is still not enough to kill me. The voice came from the sky, and under the impact of the sound waves, a huge sandstorm blew up on the ground. Not enough. With the white ape's roar, its shoulder that was shot by the second arrow directly split into thousands of figures the moment it fell. Each of them was a 3-meter-tall white stone ape with a violent expression. These white stone apes held stone sticks in their hands, and like heavenly soldiers, they directly attacked from the sky. Seeing this, Tang Tianlin, who was controlling the Three-River Lock to imprison O's Yuan Hong, couldn't help but snort coldly. They really come from the same species. You have learned all the tricks of that annoying monkey. Yang Jian, how long can you imprison me? At this time, Mo's Yuan Hong violently twisted his body, and the mountain river lock was stretched to the limit in an instant. Tang Tianlin didn't move at this time, but the third golden eye on his forehead flashed from time to time. At this time, Tang Tianlin, his consciousness suddenly sank into the depths of his mind, and he actually communicated with the real Tang Tianlin. Are you really the legendary Yang Jian? Erlang Shun? Listen, I can't tell you too much in detail now, but if you want to live, you have to listen to what I'm going to say next clearly. Okay, go ahead. Your body is too weak. Even though I helped you devour the power of the evil Dragon Empress, it only allowed me to barely use one attack. I only have the power for one attack. After one attack, my soul will need to sleep for a while. One attack, as long as the time is right, one attack is enough to decide the outcome. Pay attention, listen carefully. Okay. Facing the large number of white stone apes rushing down from the sky, Nan Xiaonan suddenly opened her eyes wide. Damn, isn't this the explosive attack? She was familiar with it. This was a move she often used. Explosive attack to sweep the world. As long as her star creation world could be opened. Explosive attack is against the rules. Nan Xiaonan gritted her teeth and opened the demonic diagram with a face full of misfortune. She didn't know if the dozens of high-level monsters hidden inside were enough to fill the gaps between the teeth of the white stone apes, but she couldn't make the golden-armored general stop at this time. In a split second, dozens of high-level monsters appeared from the demonic diagram, and then rushed toward the large number of white stone apes. However, it was just as Nan Xiaonan had imagined. An army of several tens of high-level devil beasts was indeed impressive. However, when faced with the white jade stone apes that outnumbered them by several tens, hundreds, or even hundreds of times, the devil beasts were really not enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. In a face-to-face confrontation, the monsters sealed in the demonic diagram were instantly drowned, and none of them could escape. Looks like it's really afraid of the arrows shot out by total annihilation. Sword Saintly Yulo's body was glowing with a golden aura. Legend has it that total annihilation can shoot out an arrow that destroys the soul. This should be what it's most afraid of. Since that's the case, there's no reason for this old man to just watch the battle. The kingdom's sword saint rushed toward the horizon with his sword in hand. That golden aura was his burning radiance. The sword saint slashed with his sword, and the sword light instantly cut open a gap in the white stone ape army. He charged in with his sword, blocking 1,000 soldiers by himself. "Teacher, let me help you." Peace between man and nature took a deep breath. With a wave of his hand, a small purple sword instantly flew out and wrapped around his body. Under the purple light, peace between man and nature instantly soared into the sky. Before flying, he didn't forget to control the small purple sword and cut a few more wounds on Princess Carol's body that exposed her bones. Teacher and student worked together to kill their way in and out of the white stone ape army. It was just that these white stone apes were created by Mosen Yuan Hong's magical ability. Although each of them didn't have the powerful strength of an ape, they could still inherit their fighting experience. Their stone staves were truly exquisite and peerless stave techniques. The stone ape army finally surrounded the golden-armored general. They were like worker ants waiting to share their prey, densely packed. Nan Xiaonan retreated step by step, and there was almost no way to retreat. She subconsciously raised her head and saw that the golden-armored general had already drawn the total annihilation for the third time. But this time, there was no divine weapon as an arrow. Only a gray light arrow slowly formed on the bowstring. This time, it was unusually slow. Why didn't he directly shoot the soul arrow with the first arrow? Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but feel greatly puzzled. Because the total annihilation needs to be charged. When the first two arrows detonated the two divine weapons, it also absorbed the power of the two divine weapons. Only in this way can the third soul arrow be created. "Mr. Luo." Nan Xiaonan instantly turned her head, overjoyed. She felt so wrong that she almost cried. "You finally showed up. I didn't leave for long either." Boss Luo looked at her and smiled casually. After saying this, he didn't pay attention to Nan Xiaonan's resentful gaze. Luo Qiu looked at Ji Lian. The current Ji Lian seemed to be at a loss of what to do. "Don't you plan to do something?" Ji Lian opened her mouth in fear, but didn't know what to say. Boss Luo suddenly said. One day, a young man was walking on the street. At this time, a car that had lost control rushed towards him. And on the road of this car, there was also a scared child. Ji Lian couldn't help but stare blankly at this time. Boss Luo continued. For this young man, all of this happened very suddenly. He didn't even think that this kind of thing would happen in front of him. There was no rehearsal, and no one told him what to do. For him, this was a completely unexpected thing. He didn't have time to think about anything, but his body surpassed his thinking. Then he rushed out. Did he save that child? Ji Lian subconsciously asked. Do you want me to tell you yes or no? Boss Luo asked her back. If yes, will it give you the power of hope? If no, will it make you lose something? Boss Luo suddenly smiled and pointed at the army of white jade stone apes behind the army. There was a huge white ape standing between the sky and the earth. You see, doesn't this look like an adventure? An earth-shattering adventure. A great adventure that can move the hearts of those who aspire to become great adventurers. As soon as Ji Lian opened his mouth, he could not help but follow along and subconsciously said, Then, are there also a few good equipment? And if you buy 3 of them, you'll get free maintenance for the whole year. And if you buy 5 of them, you'll get 1 more chance at the lottery? Boss Luo looked at him and suddenly said, If it were you, would you save that child in the middle of the road? He didn't answer, but clenched his teeth and suddenly turned around. Ji Lian waved his hand, and a small green sword instantly rushed out from the blood-red mark. Boss Luo smiled and waved his hand. A white light instantly covered Ji Lian's body. Under this white light, Ji Lian felt a large amount of energy surging out of his body. He immediately grabbed the small cyan sword. With a thought, the small cyan sword led his body and directly charged into the white jade stone ape army. It couldn't be said that he was invincible, but he was not weak either. Mr. Luo, is this the way you usually kidnap young people? Nan Xiaonan had moved to Boss Luo's side, mainly because it was safe here and it could provide the most secure place for her. By the way, Lady Nan, I have some extra equipment here. Do you want it? Boss Luo smiled and shook a small bag, shaking out a pile of strange things in front of Nan Xiaonan. Nan Xiaonan squinted her eyes. She didn't want to fight? How safe was it to stay here? But she still bent down to pick up the equipment excitedly. Mr. Luo, I thought you didn't want to fight. I'm also a follower. Boss Luo said indifferently at this time. I'm still participating in this game. What I gave Julian was just one of the abilities of the Holy Light Priest class. After that, Boss Luo directly pulled out the magnificent sword bought from the weapon booth under the bridge in King City and chuckled. It's okay to fight small monsters. He waved the sword. Thousands of sword lights went straight to the sea of white jade stone apes. Behind Boss Luo, it was like opening a sword light treasury. Oh, fight small monsters. Nan Xiaonan rolled her eyes and then looked at the pile of equipment on the ground. She suddenly saw a dagger among them. Hey, isn't this Goddess Promise Blade? Nan Xiaonan took a deep breath, picked up the goddess's blade on the ground, and raised it. Oh, I feel it. I feel it. My whole body seems to be full of power. It's fake. In fact, there was no reaction at all. Chapter 1897. But the Prama blade was real, so Nan Xiaonan picked it up without hesitation. Not for any other reason, but because she recognized this item among the pile of weapons and equipment. Okay, Mr. Luo, let me help you. Holding the goddess blade in her hand, Nan Xiaonan shouted loudly. But when Nan Xiaonan raised the goddess blade in her hand again, she saw that the white jade stone ape army in front of her had been cleared out. Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but blink. What she saw was clearly the scene of the cheater who refused to admit that he had cheated, waving his hand and beating up the so-called little monsters. It seems that you don't really need me? How can that be? I saved Lady Nan's share. Oh, Nan Xiaonan frowned. Following Mr. Luo's instructions, she subconsciously turned around and instantly saw a big guy that was more than 10 times the size of the other white jade stone apes. At this moment, it was swinging a stone pillar and shouting at her. Nan Xiaonan glanced at Boss Luo. Is he human? Boss Luo smiled and waved his hand. Nan Xiaonan instantly had the same treatment as Jillian just now. After bathing in a holy white light, her physical strength began to skyrocket. At one point, she even felt that her body was about to burst open. With this seemingly inexhaustible energy, it wouldn't be difficult for her to sit on the ground and absorb dirt. Wah, wah, wah. Nan Xiaonan's face was flushed, and her forehead seemed to be emitting steam. She immediately rushed towards the big guy that was more than 10 times the size of the other white jade stone apes. I feel my whole body is filled with energy. This time it's real. Wah. Boss Luo was just standing in the same place. The big sword in his hand that he bought from a street stall in King City was waved from time to time. The dense sword light was like a treasure being taken out of a vault, but the firepower was more concentrated than any artillery in the world. At this moment, a hoarse voice suddenly sounded in Boss Luo's ears. It was King Amos' voice. Should I be grateful to you, or should I hate you? Your Majesty, as you wish. Boss Luo looked very casual. Silence. The legendary king's voice rang again. You've done what you promised me, and I should indeed thank you for returning the 3 divine weapons. Although you borrowed total annihilation, Aster of Aurora had indeed been lost before you came, and Serpent that devours all spells is no longer in our hands. It's just that I don't want Ji Lian to be involved in this matter. You gave the 3 godly weapons to him. This is why I should hate you. Boss Luo remained unmoved and waved the gorgeous sword in his hand from time to time. This hatred isn't as a king. As a father's father. This is something that I should have personally handed to him. Unfortunately, I couldn't do it, and I can't do it. Hating you is the same as hating myself. An incomparably failed father. Apocalypse continued to be activated. However, the wound on Princess Carol's body that was cut by the peace between man and nature was no longer bleeding. It wasn't because this useless princess inherited part of the continent's dragon bloodline's self-healing ability, but because the blood in her body had already flowed out. The golden-armored general's body began to collapse again when facing the apocalypse that was already filled with divine power. But it was still holding on. The last soul arrow gradually solidified. Boss Luo suddenly stopped and put the sword in his hand back into the scabbard. There were no more white jadestone apes in the area he was guarding. But Nan Xiaonan was still fighting with that big guy. Sword Saintly Yulo led the peace between man and nature and was still fighting fiercely, struggling to hold on. G. Amos was full of hot blood, but he was still a beginner. He couldn't control the power of the small green sword well. Although he was rampaging among the white jadestone apes, he was like a blind fly. But at this moment, Mo's Yuan Hong was struggling crazily. He forcibly dragged Tang Tianlin, that was trapping him with Mountain River Lock. The huge white ape that towered into the sky directly raised its foot. It intended to crush everything on the ground with its foot that was the size of the entire King's city. This black shadow that was enough to crush everything made the entire King's city fall into darkness. Luochio glanced at it and opened his palm in front of him. Shards of stone flew out of his pocket one after another. 2 pieces for pieces, 10 pieces, more pieces. Except for 2 pieces that came from Nan Xiaonan, the other pieces came from the elf lady in the home of elves, the second day's Mayfair. Since it's rare for me to come here as a game participant, Boss Luo smiled. I should do something that a game participant should do. Besides, I'm just using the items that I got here. It has nothing to do with integrity, right? Pieces of stone fragments gathered around Boss Luo at this time like a star ring. Then, under his wave, this circle of stone fragments instantly faced the huge foot of the huge white ape. Actually, no one wanted to be hit by this huge foot. Luochio thought that he should be no exception. The halo-like stone fragments scattered in an instant. They turned into countless rays of light and instantly wrapped around the gigantic white ape's body. For Yuan Hong, this was a kick filled with power. Once the Yamo's king, who had transformed into a golden-armored general, was dead, he would have no more worries. He only needed time to slowly grind away at Yang Jian's true spirit and divine soul. Who could resist the terrifying foot of this world-destroying white ape? It was not even as difficult as stepping on an ant on the ground. Since the middle of the God-Sealing War, when he was trapped by Yang Jian, who held Emperor Nvuo's most precious treasure, Mountain River Diagram, this general of the GS school had been thinking about how to escape. However, this was Emperor Nvuo's most precious treasure after all, and Yang Jian's strength was on par with him. Yuan Hong couldn't calculate how long he had been sealed in the Mountain River Diagram. However, he was born as one of the spiritual monkeys with a special background. Even the refining power inside the Mountain River Diagram couldn't destroy his true spirit. However, he couldn't find a chance to get out of the situation more than once, which made Yuan Hong disheartened. But he never thought that Yang Jian, who controlled the Mountain River Diagram, would suddenly lose his physical body, and even his divine soul would be seriously injured. Here came the chance. This was a real chance. As long as he stomped down, everything would be fixed. But who's blocking me? A furious voice sounded. Facing the flashing light, Mo's, Yuan Hong's face changed instantly, and he became angry. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't really stomp down. How could there be so many? In the sky, Tang Tianlin was also full of surprise. Few things could surprise this fierce general who had once dominated the God-Sealing War in the void. The void he had traveled and the dimensions he had explored were much more than that of a female demon from another world who had been moving forward. Was it strange? That was the real Tang Tianlin. His voice. At this time, he was communicating with Yang Jian, who was controlling his body from the depths of his consciousness. If someone can collect more fragments, I won't be too surprised. After all, as long as one is willing to spend time, there's a high probability that he can do it. Tang Tianlin shook his head at this time. What really surprises me is that the person behind these core fragments can really drive the power of the mountain river diagram. I don't quite understand. Doesn't he have special privileges after getting these fragments? Just like the giant created by Wally using the fragments before. That's just the ability given by the fragments. It's not the power that the owner should have by actively controlling the fragments. The two can't be mentioned in the same breath. Tang Tianlin said in a deep voice, "The mountain river diagram is the most precious treasure of Empress Envoi of a human clan. I was also given by Empress Envoi, so I can control part of the power of the mountain river diagram, but I still haven't fully released the full power of the mountain river diagram." You mean, someone can control these fragments almost as much as you can? What do you mean? The real Tang Tianlin's voice was shocked. I don't know. Tang Tianlin, Yang Jian directly said at this time, I've been sleeping for too long. I can't know what happened to the mountain river diagram until the core spirit is reassembled. Even so, Tang Tianlin could still feel a trace of irritation in this Erlang immortal's words. I seem to have a skill that can directly see the whole situation. The real Tang Tianlin suddenly said in his mind. Yang Jian was stunned and said subconsciously, What did you say? Skill. Don't you understand? Skill, open the skill panel in my mind. Yes, the third row on the left, do you see it? Why are you so stupid? Not this. Noisy. I don't need you to teach me. With a cold snort, the real old Tang, in his mind, had to be silent. At this time, Yang Jian quickly found the trick and opened the servant skill. A mirror-like light screen quickly opened in front of him, and he quickly adjusted his field of vision. Humph! It's just a small trick like the dazzling light mirror. The old Tang, in his mind, still didn't say anything and just silently watched the result of the skill observation. After the adjustment, a figure slowly appeared on the mirror at this time. Isn't this? Do you know this person? Yang Jian instantly moved his mind. This is the same as me, one of the servants who entered the chessboard this time, and he seems to be the child of an old friend of mine. The child of an old friend? Yang Jian at this time, but at this time he said in a deep voice, no matter what kind of relationship he has with you at this time, the one who is controlling the core spirit fragment to seal Yuan Hong is indeed this person. If there is a chance. He seemed to want to say something. Old Tang felt that Yang Jian at this time should have a plan in his mind at this time. However, at this time, Yang Jian's words suddenly stopped at this time. The special mirror in front of him that was condensed by the servant's function in front of him was suddenly broken at this time. After breaking, the broken fragments burst out and instantly fell on Tang Tianlin's body. The burst of those fragments was not powerful, and it didn't hurt or itch, but it was more like a kind of warning. Did he just look at us and smile at us? Old Tang in the sea of consciousness asked hesitantly at this time, with an unconfident voice at this time. Say something, will you? Erlang Shun? What's wrong with you? Erlang Shun. Why is there such a in the mountain river diagram? Old Tang could only hear Yang Jian's absent-minded voice at this time. Yang Jian, what happened? At this time, Yang Jian slowly sighed at this time. After being silent for a while, he said in a deep voice, Even if I tell you, you can't understand, just like how we can't understand the way of the sage. But no matter what, since this person controlled the fragment to seal Yuan Hong, at least it means that he is temporarily doing the same thing as us. No matter what, I must regain control of the mountain river diagram. And I can't let the supreme treasure of Empress Envoi fall into the hands of the people of the GS sect. In the sea of consciousness, Old Tang didn't listen to the words of this legendary Erlang Shan at all. At this time, his mind was full of the gaze and smile of Boss Luo in the skill mirror just now. Instinctively, Old Tang had a feeling that this gaze and smile seemed to be directed at him, not Yang Jian. Is he really a child of Team Luo? But soon, Mosen, Yuan Hong's angry roar instantly interrupted Old Tang's thoughts. Mosen, Yuan Hong's mobility was partially sealed by the mountain river lock, activated by Yang Jian, and now his body was bound by dozens of light rays. Such a huge world-destruction white ape was tied up like a dumpling at this time, and one could imagine how it felt. Who? Who is it? If you have the ability, come out and fight with me. What kind of hero are you to hide your head and show your tail? Get the hell out of here. A burst of sound louder than thunder hit the ground. This angry roar even shook the people who were fighting with the white jade stone ape army, and they all had a splitting headache. After all, Nan Xiaonan's follower body didn't have a strong foundation, and at this time, she was directly shaken to the point that her 7 orifices were bleeding. In the distance, Sword Saintly Yulo and peace between man and nature were also struggling to hold on. However, Jillian, who was rampaging in the white jade stone ape army, seemed to be unaffected at this time. When Mosen, Yuan Hong roared, Jillian's body automatically emitted a gentle force to protect his ears. This seems to be the power of Glory Apostle. Jillian was thinking about the changes in his body at this time. Since he received Mr. Luo's help in the secret room of the weapon shop and completed the profession change, he had not had time to study this new ability properly. He really didn't have time. Every minute and every second, he was receiving all kinds of explosive information. In just half a day, no, in just 2 or 3 hours. But even if he consciously wanted to control the ability of Glory Apostle, he still couldn't get the hang of it. Just as Jillian was secretly panicking, his rampaging body suddenly stopped. The irascible small green sword had even become abnormally quiet at this moment. He completely stopped and saw a little girl in a white dress in front of him, looking at him. At this time, the little girl was standing in the white jade stone ape army. However, these fierce white jade stone apes seemed to not see the little girl, and they all flew past the little girl. You are. Jillian couldn't help but be stunned at this time and subconsciously said, Mr. Luo's sister? At this time, the little girl in white looked at Jillian indifferently at this time. You are my apostle. What? Jillian opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. The little girl in white said directly, Be quiet. I will teach you the real power of glory, my apostle. Before Jillian could react, the little girl in white took a small step forward and directly appeared in front of him. What's more, the little girl directly reached out her slender hands and directly touched his cheeks. Little miss, what do you want to do? At this time, he was completely unable to move at all. Jillian was horrified to find that the hands of Mr. Luo's sister not only touched his face, but also his head at this time. And finally, the little girl in white's hands were completely inserted into his head. Knowledge reconstruction. Accelerated mode. At this moment, Jillian suddenly remembered his father Max. When he was forging new weapons and equipment, he would often throw a lot of materials directly into the furnace. Jillian felt like he was a pile of materials being thrown into the furnace. Pain. The heart-wrenching pain. In an instant, he let out a throat-tearing scream. Chapter 1898. Many years ago, the Sword Saint of the Kingdom had been thinking about some questions. Where were the limits of human beings? Could human strength really surpass the heavens? What was the origin of human beings? Were human beings really created by God? What was the end of swordsmanship? Was there really an end to swordsmanship? He couldn't see the road after the Holy Domain for a long time. This seemed to be the strongest ability of human beings. It was the limit that an individual could achieve without relying on external forces. There would be progress, but it wouldn't be a qualitative change. It would just be a trivial accumulation of quantity. Yulo had used this sword for decades, so he was very familiar with it. Even if it was the weight of a grain of sand, he would still be able to feel it clearly. But he had never experienced such a moment before. For him, this sword that he was used to using was actually so heavy. That's right, heavy like his heart and body. The army of white jade stone apes wasn't endless, but the physical strength of human beings had begun to see the end. From a moment ago, what supported the Sword Saint of the Kingdom to swing his sword was no longer physical strength, but unyielding willpower. Would his willpower also be exhausted? There was a limit to human energy. He just swung his sword mechanically, swung it, swung it. He didn't even know if he had hit his opponent or if he hadn't hit him at all. Teacher. When he realized that this was the sound of peace between man and nature, the sword saint subconsciously shivered. He looked down at his chest and found that the right shoulder blade of his chest had been pierced by a stone stick from behind. Liulo gasped. He gritted his teeth and turned around. The weapon in his hand fell and directly cut a white jade stone ape behind him in half. His body staggered a few steps. With the support of his sword, he barely managed to stand firm. However, after standing firm, he looked up and saw that at least dozens of white jade stone apes had rushed to his side. The ferocious look on their faces seemed to be the same as Mo's, Yuan Hong's at this moment. Peace between man and nature killed its way to Li Yulo's side from the chaotic battlefield. The small purple sword was still flashing, but the light was much dimmer. Teacher, I'm fine. Peace between man and nature looked around. While supporting the injured Li Yulo, he controlled the small purple sword to force back the attacking white jade stone apes. He gritted his teeth and said, "We can't hold on any longer. I'll escort you away." Li Yulo's eyes flashed with a strange light. He suddenly grabbed peace between man and nature's arm. "No, we belong to the old era. The one who should go is you. Let go. Protect me? Do you have confidence that you can kill your way out of this army of stone apes? You don't." Li Yulo stared into Mu Tenen's eyes and said in a deep voice, "If you really want to leave something behind, then it will be yours. Go, go, take my everything." After that, a powerful force slammed into Mu of the Sky's back, pushing his entire body out of the battlefield. "You have all the things I have learned in my life. I'll give you my sacred heart." The sword saint shouted, "But I'm not asking you to inherit it. It will turn into nutrients and nourish the sacred heart that truly belongs to you. Peace between man and nature. I can't do it. Help me do it. Go to the limits of humanity and break through this limit." A golden fruit-like ball of light shot out and entered peace between man and nature's body. Sword Saint Li Yulo was already submerged in the army of stone apes. Seeing his teacher of 20 years being lifted up by the stone sticks in the hands of the stone apes, peace between man and nature's eyes turned red. He had always been a very calm person. He judged the situation and knew how to make the right choice. F***, that last torch. This should have been his father's murderer. That year, he saw the kingdom's sword saint pierce his father's heart with his own eyes, destroying his country and even taking him away. That sword saint taught him sword skills, guided him to master great power, and even accompanied him. It was a very long time, so long that peace between man and nature almost forgot what had happened in the past. That horrifying scene in his childhood was more like a nightmare to him. Now, this was his reality. There was a man who wasn't her father, but treated her even better than her real father. The people of the old era. In grief and indignation, peace between man and nature pulled out his sword and used all his strength to slash out the most powerful sword energy of his life. Without you in the old era, there wouldn't be an era after us. What old era and new era? I only know that we are all in the same era. In an instant, a purple light shot out from Mu Tianren's body and into the sky. The huge purple light shone on everything in the surroundings. Those white jade stone apes that were rushing over were directly driven away at this moment. Peace between man and nature raised his hands that were covered by the purple light in a daze. He saw that the small purple sword that was transformed from the sword soul beast was flying and buzzing. This is instantly peace between man and nature seemed to have sensed something. He raised his head subconsciously. He saw that in front of him there was a green light that was flying toward him at a terrifying speed. The buzzing sound of the small purple sword became louder and louder. The palm-sized small purple sword turned into a 3-foot-long green sword with a flash of flowing light. Peace between man and nature instantly grasped this long purple sword in his hand. Instantly, he seemed to understand everything. Is it because you were stimulated by it, another sword soul beast? In front of him, in the green light, a person was flying toward him with a sword in his hand. Jillian. The white jade stone apes on the way surrounded him. However, under the illumination of the green light, the bodies of these white jade stone apes were instantly destroyed as if they were pierced by thousands of swords. In just a few breaths' time, Jillian flew to peace between man and nature's side. Lord, peace between man and nature. Sorry to keep you waiting. His spirit, energy, and spirit were all different. Peace between man and nature looked at the young man in front of him who still had a trace of childishness on his face. He found that Jillian's spirit, energy, and spirit seemed to have undergone a tremendous change. But the most obvious change was from the thing on Jillian's forehead. White flame. Peace between man and nature stared at Jillian's forehead in a daze. In this place, there was a bunch of white flame that was burning fiercely. This, Jillian looked up, as if he was also looking at the flame on his forehead. He quickly said, "It seems to be something called Flame of Death. I don't really understand what it is about before the last reboot, but it doesn't feel bad. There seems to be some unknown changes in your body." Peace between man and nature said subconsciously. Jillian said seriously, "Lord, peace between man and nature. Let's save Lord Sword Saint first. I need you to help me." "How?" Peace between man and nature asked directly without any hesitation. "Lord, peace between man and nature. Let's combine." Combine? Peace between man and nature was stunned. At this time, Jillian directly grabbed peace between man and nature's hand and said quickly, "I don't have time to explain it to you. There are many strange things in my head right now, and I can't explain it clearly myself. Anyway, let's do it." He wanted to say something, but at this time, there was a strange fluctuation from Jillian's palm. This came from the green light shining on Jillian's body. It was intertwined with the purple light on peace between man and nature's body, and called out to each other. In an instant, a green longsword flew out from Jillian's hand, and the purple longsword in peace between man and nature's hand also flew out. The green and purple long swords intertwined with each other at this time, and the two lights released by them were also intertwining with each other at this moment. Finally, the green and purple long swords disappeared in the intertwining lights. Then, a golden sword light slowly descended in front of peace between man and nature and Jillian. Jillian first reached out and grasped the golden sword light. He looked at peace between man and nature, and peace between man and nature understood and directly grasped it. "I'll control the output of power," Jillian quickly said at this time. "Lord, peace between man and nature. Your swordsmanship is better than mine, so I'll leave the details to you. When one person's power is not enough to change the situation, then two people together. This is our battle. Why do I feel an inexplicably high degree of shame?" Peace between man and nature sighed, and then exhaled the turbid air, his mood rising. Then come. In an instant, the golden sword light that the two of them were holding together soared into the sky. It became huge, and at least 100 meters long. Then, without saying a word, it swept towards the army of white jade stone apes. The 100-meter-long sword light that contained a strange power was like a blazing flame. As it swept across, the white jade stone apes were like wax, instantly melting one by one. Peace between man and nature and Jillian, at this moment, joined hands and flew around the battlefield without stopping, killing. When his body was supported by dozens of stone sticks, Liuro felt that his life had come to an end. He did not regret anything. If there was any regret, it would probably be that he had not been able to touch the limits of mankind. However, he had already placed his last hope. As for whether it could bloom on peace between man and nature, it was not something he could control. "I'm still not satisfied I haven't seen it." Liuro reached out to the sky, but the sky was dark, covered by the bodies of the world-destroying white apes. At this moment, a golden light lit up in the darkness. Like the brilliance of the sun, Liuro subconsciously opened his eyes wide. What he saw were two young faces. The Kingdom's Sword Saint smiled at this moment, as if he saw an insignificant flower of hope blooming. Teacher, it's time to wake up. Peace between man and nature's voice sounded. The kingdom's sword saint, whose body was already numb to the point that it was difficult for him to even lift a finger, couldn't help but smile bitterly. As a student, only you can torture yourself to death like this. Even so, at this moment, a small ray of light separated from the huge golden sword light and went directly into the kingdom's sword saint's body. Bathed in this weak radiance, a new energy actually began to surge towards Li Yurua's four limbs. A look of astonishment flashed across his eyes. Then, with a deep roar, under the urging of this new energy, he instantly forced back the white jade stone ape that was holding him. The bleeding from the wound seemed to have stopped. The kingdom's sword saint once again lifted the long sword that had accompanied him for many years. Then, I'll add fuel to the fire for you. Peace between man and nature. Watch carefully. This is the last time I'll show you my sword technique. In a loud shout, the kingdom's sword saint surged with endless fighting spirit and charged toward the white jade ape. This won't be the last time. The loud shout sounded again, but this time it was Ji Lian's voice. Under his lead, the two people with huge sword light in their hands charged into the sky at the same time. What do you want to do? The kingdom of peace between man and nature asked in a different voice. Ji Lian looked at the ground, and the childishness on his face seemed to have completely disappeared. In an instant, the kingdom of peace between man and nature seemed to see a trace of King Amos in Ji Lian. History, eras should never be guarded by one person. Ji Lian's voice wasn't loud, but it seemed to be able to spread out. The entire ruined royal city, at this moment his voice rang out. This is an era that belongs to all of us. If we want to protect it, then we should all protect it together. The huge sword light suddenly released a dazzling brilliance. The brilliance was like a meteor shower, densely and continuously falling to every corner of the royal city. Glory belongs to everyone. Accept the mark of glory. Together, we will create a new era that truly belongs to us. The brilliance entered everyone's body. When he was pressed to the ground by a white jade stone ape, and no longer had any vitality to speak of, Messentanyan decided that instead of dying in the hands of the enemy, he would rather die heroically and die together with the enemy. However, at this moment, the brilliance entered his body. Nan Xiaonan felt a sense of despair, as if she had done it 20 or 30 times in one night, but the guy on the bed still didn't intend to stop. So King tired. Is this guy a Tauren? His endurance is so good. This big guy in front of me. What kind of broken goddess blade is this? It can't even break through this big guy's defense, right? Yeah. She felt something hit her from behind and suddenly pierced into her body. She was full, satisfied, and even energetic. Come on, let's fight for another 300 rounds. Who's afraid of who? This as Dr. Gore stared at his own hands in a daze. He looked at Tina, who was beside him in a daze, only to see that there was a hazy brilliance on Tina's body. Suddenly, Tina stood up and drew out her weapon. Without saying anything, she charged toward the army of white jade stone apes, as if she had gone crazy. Dr. Gores knew that she wasn't responding to the boy's voice. She was just venting the madness and uneasiness in her heart, as well as instinctively comforting herself that she didn't know what to do. Looking at the situation, we can't escape. Dr. Gore sighed, but he also slowly raised his weapon. The hazy brilliance on his body actually made his emotions rise continuously. In the end, this is also a kind of plague, the so-called light of hope. A big rock suddenly shattered, and Lily slowly walked out of the cellar. Her body was also suffused with a hazy brilliance. Lily subconsciously raised her head to look at the darkness in the sky. Mose, what's wrong with me? He stared blankly at his own hands. The people around him were also blankly looking around, but most of them raised their heads to look at the sky. One after another, the hazy brilliance slowly appeared on everyone's body. They were the professionals who came to the king's city to participate in this competition. They had mutated into crazy monsters, turned into giants that destroyed the palace, and were finally shot down. Although I don't know what happened, it seems like a bad guy wants to destroy our world. Let's just F***CK him up. I'll F***CK this big guy as high as the sky, to death first. Is there anyone who's with me? Exciting, exciting. If I don't die today, I can go back and brag about it for the rest of my life. More and more professionals who had fallen down and were unconscious slowly stood up from their terrible injuries, as if they were passing on fire. In the ruins of the king's city, streaks of hazy brilliance appeared and spread at a terrifying speed to those who stood up. These are Yang Jian's true soul was the secondary main force that limited Yuan Hong's mobility. Most of it was Boss Luo's fragments. Although it was strenuous, he was much better off after being reduced to a secondary main force. Which professionists, how could they? Old Tang's voice sounded. Glory. Yang Jian's true soul muttered. It's the origin will of this small world, sure enough. It hasn't been completely destroyed by the mountain river painting. What are you talking about? Yang Jian's true soul quickly said. Tang Tianlin, remember what I told you. I'm going to act. There's only one chance. You have to grasp it. Old Tang thought about it for a while, then finally probed with his thoughts. True Lord, can't you carry on the spirit of hard work, exert your own initiative, grit your teeth, and squeeze out one more attack? I can, Yang Jian's true soul directly answered. Really? Old Tang was overjoyed. If you don't mind being turned into ashes and never reincarnated, I can attack again. Yang Jian's true soul said calmly. What are you waiting for? Come on. Once is enough, I'll grasp it. Old Tang sat up straight and made a solemn promise. You guys are trapped in a chessboard, and you don't even know that your lives and fates are being controlled. It was like passing on fire. A small light was so small that it couldn't be seen by the world destruction white ape's huge body that could shake the world. However, when these small lights began to spread on the ground and spread at a terrifying speed, they eventually turned into an ocean of light. Dozens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, and even more. The tiny humans were charging towards it, trying in vain to shake the sky-high body with their tiny bodies. This venerable one, is this world right now? You all deserve to die. Boom, boom, boom. Above the endless red demon clouds, lightning flashed and thunder roared. The dark sky seemed to have lost its supporting pillar and was about to collapse. This was the true moment when the sky collapsed. However, the people on the ground still charged up dauntlessly. Some people fell, but the people behind them caught them, pulled them up, and charged up again. They didn't give up halfway, and they didn't retreat, even if their bodies were destroyed by the lightning in the process. They still charged forward dauntlessly, as if they were endless. Willpower. I've seen this scene before. On the ground, Nen Xiaonan, who was standing on the back of the gigantic white jade stone ape, raised her head and looked at the scene of the sky collapsing. She muttered to herself, I've seen it before. I've also experienced it before in my world. What made you guys so crazy? I know, for an unreachable hope, I originally thought that I would forget this scene, forget it forever. I've also participated in it. Prama, his goddess blade, at this moment, was emitting a 7-colored radiance from Nan Xiaonan's hand. Nan Xiaonan lifted it up and muttered to herself. So it's not that I can't use it, it's just that I never wanted to use it. With a chuckle, Nan Xiaonan showed a fanatical look on her face. Turning into a 7-colored radiance, Nan Xiaonan instantly breaks through the sky. Her undying soul that came from the void dimension instantly combusts. Big head Mo, look at who I am. You idiot taught by your trashy mother, wake up for me. Like a heavy hammer, Nan Xiaonan drove the goddess blade to summon the divine power of Pramal once. She slammed the divine power into the head of the world destruction white ape. The impact was as heavy as a meteorite, and it made Mosen Yuan Hong's consciousness chaotic. Why is there a void god here? Before his consciousness was chaotic, Mosen Yuan Hong couldn't help but exclaim in disbelief. Who are you looking down on? I'm a star creation great teacher of a world, and a witch who once ended the world. F***CKU. She slammed it again. After this collision, Mose and Yuan Hong, who was originally in a state of chaos, suddenly saw stars. Instantly, his footsteps became unstable, and this huge body that was like the sky started to sway, as if it was going to fall down. Nan Xiaonan released the divine power for the second time, and Perma's blade was broken instantly. Her whole body seemed to be hollowed out, and she fell to the ground from the end of the sky. I played too much. Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but laugh bitterly, as if mocking herself. Why did you risk your life? Don't you know what you're capable of? Anyway, Nan Xiaonan took a deep breath and shouted hoarsely, "Help! Fall!" It was like standing on the surface of a calm mirror like water. This was the inner world of the Golden Armor General, the inner world, the world of consciousness. Everything was fine. It was as if he could see the reflections of many familiar faces in the mirror. He was the only one standing here, the King of Yamos. He knew that the body of the Golden Armor General had reached its limit. This limit could no longer be broken by human strength. However, the last soul arrow couldn't be condensed. Humans are still small. King Amos looked up at the world-destroying white ape, which is also a huge monster for the whole world. We're so insignificant that even if we just want to control our own lives, it's a luxury. He slowly exhaled. Are you going to give up everything? Your Majesty? The voice seemed to come from behind King Amos. Behind him on the left. He knew that it was the voice of the mysterious follower, Mr. Luo. Isn't it a pity to give up since we've come this far? King Amos chuckled. However, his body of consciousness suspended above the calm water mirror was faintly unstable and began to shatter little by little. Indeed, it's a pity before the end. This time, the voice seemed to come from behind King Amos on the right. Look, King Amos said in a deep voice, those souls who are still struggling. There will always be a time when all humans are fighting for a common goal. You should know that when such a time comes, it means that the world has reached its limit. The voice sounded from all directions around King Amos. In this space of consciousness, King Amos saw many Mr. Luo. They appeared around him, in front of him, and even above him. They turned upside down. Even under the calm water surface, they turned upside down. It was as if this place had become an infinite space. Countless pairs of eyes were looking at him at the same time. This is a good thing, King Amos said slowly. At the same time, he stretched out his hands. In the world of consciousness, a longbow covered in light slowly fell into King Amos's hands. He held it and slowly pulled the bowstring. Pulled it open. This is a good thing, King Amos said softly. If we cross it, there will naturally be a new world. If we can't cross it, it can only mean that we can only stop here. All the unwillingness, all the pain should be buried. It's better than self-destruction. You're right. King Amos silently looked at the endless eyes in front of him. You're right. He smiled gently. The longbow in his hand was pulled to the maximum. A light arrow appeared on the bowstring. In the world of consciousness, King Amos raised it. If you don't say it, I'll take it as yes. After all, the so-called king has always been so capricious. The bowstring was released. The light arrow shot out. It instantly shot through this world of consciousness. The countless figures that were looking at King Amos seemed to be annihilated along with the shattering of this world of consciousness. Not bad. Not bad. Boss Luo slowly opened his eyes and turned around. Behind him, at this moment, the body of the golden-armored warrior was instantly shattered. However, a condensed light arrow had been shot out from total annihilation. The moment it was shot out, total annihilation was completely shattered. Without this light arrow, it whistled and soared into the sky. It's really not bad. Boss Luo smiled slightly. After the golden-armored warrior was shattered, it turned into specks of starlight and instantly gathered. Then, it merged into Luochio's palm and finally became a small light ball. You go too, Araya. Boss Luo finally said softly. If you want to deal with this king, you're still a little lacking. The swaying world destruction, white ape suddenly stabilized at this moment. Mo's Yuan Hong's voice sounded angrily again. No one can stop this king. It opened its mouth and let out a roar that shook the world. The whole world shook crazily at this moment. The sky cracked at this moment, and the body of the world destruction white ape expanded again at this moment. His swollen body finally broke through the seal of the mountain river lock. Yang Jian, this king won, died. At this moment, a meteor-like flash streaked across the dark earth. This meteor instantly cut through the demonic clouds, broke through the sky, and noiselessly shot towards the end of the world. Yang Jian, Yang Jian, Yang Jian. After the meteor flashed, Yuan Hong, the violent body of Mosen, stopped in an instant. At this moment, Yang Jian's true spirit turned into a flowing light and rushed towards Yuan Hong's body. It directly crashed into the body of the world destruction white ape. Tang Tianlin. Now is the time. This king is going to make a move. A fine crack started to appear on the world destruction white ape's chest. Then, the fine crack started to spread like lightning on the surface of the world destruction white ape's body. It was as if a tree of thunder had grown out of it. Yang Jian, Yuan Hong said with a trembling voice. This king, this time, this king is just a little bit. Rumble. Dazzling light directly shot out from the countless cracks on the body of the world destruction white ape. This unimaginably huge body directly collapsed between heaven and earth at this moment. When the light was too strong, it could really swallow all sight. A completely white world instantly appeared. In the rapid fall of the body, Tang Tianlin regained consciousness again. He even regained control of his body. Erlang Shun. However, there was no response to Left Hand's call. Old Tang frowned at this moment, only to see a light ball floating in the sky. This is the broken core of the mountain river diagram. Tang Tianlin shivered at this moment and was about to reach out and grab this broken core. Yang Jian. All of a sudden, a violent roar sounded. Tang Tianlin immediately turned pale with fright. He saw that high up in the sky, Mosen Yuan Hong was like a man made of blood, and the blood vessels all over his body had long turned crimson red. Yang Jian. It was no longer the world destruction white ape, and had already returned to the original size of Moses' body. At this moment, it could still move only because of its resentment. Tang Tianlin opened his mouth. Speaking of which, before all this happened, he seemed to have been chased and beaten by Mose. What a vengeful spirit. Old Tang smiled bitterly and was having a headache thinking about how to deal with it. However, at this moment, a golden sword light pierced through the sky under the control of the two young men, Jillian, and the peace between man and nature. When the golden sword light passed by Mose Yuan Hong in an instant, it directly swept away his resentment. Mose instantly fell to the ground, but it didn't stop. Tang Tianlin couldn't help but be shocked at this moment. He saw that the golden sword light directly pierced the broken core of the mountain river diagram. The sword went, and the core broke. Tang Tianlin opened his mouth at this moment, and he couldn't help but smile bitterly as he watched the core that Yang Jian had asked him to pick up disappear just like that. Well, I've been busy for nothing. Old Tang shook his head and simply opened his hands, and then his body fell to the ground under the influence of gravity. This was a very long process. The scenery here is not bad. What he saw was a broken world. The red demon clouds began to disperse little by little, and the night sky that reappeared was already white. From the beginning of the King City competition until now, one night had passed, but the sun hadn't risen yet. However, this was no longer the darkness before dawn, because the darkness had been broken. The hazy light on people's bodies began to fade gradually. The golden sword light slowly disappeared into the horizon. Two young figures slowly landed in the ruins of the former king's palace. As soon as they landed, the peace between man and nature quickly rushed forward. There, Tian Yinxin was currently looking after the sword saintly Yuluo, who was lying on the ground. From the looks of it, this sword saint of the kingdom was already a lamp without oil. At this moment, Jillian wanted to go up and say something, but he felt that it wasn't appropriate, so he could only hesitate and stay where he was. The white flame on his forehead was now disappearing little by little. When this white flame appeared, Ji Lian would feel that his mind was incomparably clear, and even his personality would change a little. But when it was extinguished, Ji Lian felt that he was still the youth in the weapon shop. It seemed that something was different, but also that nothing was different. A wave of dizziness came over him, and Ji Lian shook his head hard. He took a deep breath and looked up at the broken world around him. In the distance, a flickering light instantly attracted his attention. Ji Lian opened his mouth. That is, flipping over the broken walls and jumping over the broken houses, Ji Lian ran through the once bustling streets of the king's city. At last, he was surprised to find that he had returned to Locke's weapon shop. The signboard was still here, but only a small piece of the signboard was left. Ji Lian bent down to pick it up, took a deep breath, and walked into the ruins of the weapon shop. In the courtyard where he had lived for many years, Ji Lian saw a thin figure. He was currently standing in front of a crystal pillar. This was the pillar where the Highland princess was sealed. The person standing in front of the pillar was King Amos. Speaking of which, even though you've been living here all this while, this is the first time you've seen her, your mother, with your own eyes, the Yamos king said softly as he slowly turned around. You, Ji Lian subconsciously walked forward, but after a few steps, he subconsciously stopped. You don't have to call out a name that you are not ready for, King Amos said with a smile. This should be something that I can't hope for. King Amos's body gradually faded. He was now like smoke, dispersing with the wind. Your body. Ji Lian rushed up at once. I'm just here to give you a proper farewell. King Amos's eyes gradually softened. I think, whether it's me or you, should also need this farewell. Ji Lian was silent. I don't want to say sorry, King Amos said at this time. There are some words I want to tell you one last time. You should listen. You can say it, Ji Lian said with difficulty. At this time, he suddenly missed the flame of death very much. In that case, he might be able to deal with the current situation better. You don't have to miss anyone who is left. King Yamos looked at Ji Lian with a smile. Our era is over. The wealth, knowledge, and wisdom that humans have accumulated over countless years have been exhausted in this war. We have consumed everything that you should have enjoyed, leaving you with a devastated world. Ji Lian nodded and said, Our era is over. The wealth, knowledge, and wisdom that humans have accumulated over countless years have all been exhausted in this war. That's terrible, Ji Lian said with a bitter smile. Yes, it is terrible. The Yamos king chuckled as well. But it's actually not that bad. It's precisely because everything has been exhausted. All the rules, all the established and conventional things have been broken. You are free to choose the way you think is suitable for you to live. You don't have to bear any burden, because this is a new world from scratch, a new era that you should create. You can't, King Amos said softly. But you can. With the imagination of the people of the old era, we can't imagine the future that you can create. We need guidance. Ji Lian opened his mouth and subconsciously reached out to King Amos. Guidance. The Yamos king smiled. All right, I'll give you one last piece of advice. If you can't find a few good brothers who can take the blame for you, try not to provoke women who aren't easy to deal with. Ji Lian's expression changed slightly. The Yamos king smiled faintly as he slowly retreated, until his body finally faded into the crystal pillar. So, Ji Lian suddenly knelt on the ground. You are Uncle Zayart, the one who has been accompanying me, telling me adventure stories, bringing me gifts. There's always been someone watching me. Chapter 1899. Wah, wah. The sound of crying came from the sky. When she was about to hit the ground, Nan Xiaonan suddenly became flustered. Her monsters were all kneeling down, and she couldn't summon any of the demonic figure. What was worse, she couldn't slow down her falling speed. She could even foresee that her body would become a pile of meat paste. She was going to die. She was really going to die. At the moment of landing, Nan Xiaonan had to close her eyes. However, the expected impact didn't come. Nan Xiaonan was startled and opened her eyes, only to find that her body had been covered by a layer of soft circular film. Like a balloon, the film offset all her impact. Finally, under the effect of this spherical film, Nan Xiaonan's body bounced on the ground. After a burst of dizziness and tumbling stomach, the sphere finally stopped. Nan Xiaonan rolled out of the sphere's membrane, and just as her hands were about to touch the ground, she couldn't help but open her mouth and vomited out a rainbow-like mosaic of things. Vomit. It was earth-shattering, even more uncomfortable than a continuous deep throat. The academic, which in her child world couldn't help but shed tears and snot automatically. Wipe it. Thanks. She subconsciously reached out and took something. Looking down, she found it was a white handkerchief. Mr. Luo, sure enough, it was you who saved me. I knew you wouldn't abandon me. In front of Nan Xiaonan, Boss Luo just smiled casually. Well done, especially when you used Perma blade at the end. It made me see a completely different Lady Nan, quite beautiful and moving. In her impression, it was completely different from some of the previous polite compliments. Nan Xiaonan didn't know if it was an illusion, but she seemed to see something strange in Mr. Luo's eyes at this moment. She always felt that it was a kind of gaze that wanted to own her. She had a feeling of becoming a little white rabbit. Oh no, did this indescribable existence suddenly change his sexual preference and began to crave her body? Thank you for your compliment. Nan Xiaonan was now trembling with fear. Mr. Luo, what about my exam this time? What exam? Boss Luo blinked at this time. Nan Xiaonan opened her mouth with a sad face. She wailed, Mr. Luo, you can't abandon me. I become like this. I see. Boss Luo suddenly murmured. Seeing this, Nan Xiaonan's heart couldn't help sinking directly. Oh no, was I really so unlucky to meet the ultimate scumbag in the void? But the other party was in indescribable existence. Even if he really wanted a scumbag, she had no way to resist except to open her legs for him. Just when this subworld's academic, which was feeling uneasy, Boss Luo suddenly said, Lady Nan, are you interested in becoming the new goddess of this world? Goddess? Goddess what? Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but be startled. To be specific, Boss Luo thought for a while and said, it should be something like an agent, more accurate. Agent? Nan Xiaonan was stunned. Who's going to be an agent? Are you going to teach me to take care of this world? Nan Xiaonan's heart suddenly jumped. There was such a thing. After completely conquering an entire subworld, turning it into the origin of one's legend, letting the whole subworld spread its legend, becoming the only one in this subworld, then using this as the foundation, continuously spreading to other subworlds. But generally speaking, this was a high-level game that at least powerful people in the void could play. She, as an immortal, seemed to be good, but in fact she was still far from it. Not me. Boss Luo shook his head. I'm talking about the original will of this world. Nan Xiaonan instantly opened her mouth, but without thinking, she said directly, I refuse. Why? Boss Luo said curiously, you will become the only goddess of this new world. As long as you manage it well enough, you will even exist forever. But, Nan Xiaonan said seriously, I will also become the slave of the original will of this world. I can't and I won't. If you refuse me, aren't you afraid that it will end here between us? Boss Luo suddenly said expressionlessly, I'm afraid. Nan Xiaonan took a deep breath and smiled bitterly. But no matter how afraid I am, I can't cross my own boundary to do something. Even if it really ends here, I can only admit that I'm unlucky. I understand. Boss Luo smiled and nodded. Okay, Nan Xiaonan sighed. After leaving this world, I will leave immediately and find a place to hide. I will try my best not to appear in front of Mr. Luo again. Why? Boss Luo didn't understand and asked. Nan Xiaonan said helplessly, I offended you, and I know that you are involved in the change of the original will of this world. I'm afraid that you will kill me, so I can only hide, or else what can I do? I can't just open my legs and give it to you for free, right? Is struggling my last dignity? This is for you. Boss Luo suddenly threw something to Nan Xiaonan. When something was thrown to them, they would always subconsciously reach out to catch it. This was a bad habit from the depths of the soul. It seemed that these souls that had become void creatures couldn't avoid it. What is this? Nan Xiaonan subconsciously looked at the thing in her palm. She found that it was a key. Is this? This is the key to the door of my workplace. Boss Luo said softly, let's make a promise. When one day you can find a door that can be opened with this key, I will take away your freedom and, at the same time, give you the freedom you want. Of course, you can also choose not to look for this door forever. The decision is yours. She subconsciously held the key in her hand and was silent for a long time. When she came back to her senses, she found that Mr. Luo had disappeared. Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but mumble to herself, what decision is mine? At least give me a hint? Or else how am I going to find it? He didn't want me to find it at all, right? Even so, Nan Xiaonan still put the key into her servant's pocket without saying anything. But soon, she felt that it was not enough to be at ease, so she took out the key and put it in her collar. Only then did she feel relieved. At this moment, a beam of light directly fell from the sky and fell on Nan Xiaonan. Nan Xiaonan was stunned, and a feeling of being rejected by the world arose spontaneously. She bowed her head and thought for a while, and then she knew what had happened. Finally, I can leave. Tang Tianlin had landed safely on the ground. Although the final attack from Yang Jin Soul of True Spirit had almost exhausted all of his strength, if he had died, it would not have been a good thing for Yang Jin Soul of True Spirit. In the end, it left him with a little strength to survive. But Tang Tianlin could not retrieve the damaged core of the mountain river diagram. Moreover, the core was directly pierced by someone. With the core destroyed, Tang Tianlin had no idea what would become of the mountain river diagram in the end. This was something that was beyond his knowledge. However, one day in the future, Yang Jin's true spirit would wake up in his left hand again. It would be very difficult to explain to him. He shook his head, but suddenly he heard the sound of someone humming. Tang Tianlin followed the sound and climbed up a broken wall. What he saw was a figure gradually fading away. This was the woman he casually saved in the palace. Laura of the Dragon Clan. Tang Tianlin looked at Laura's back gradually disappearing in the ruins at this time, and felt somewhat pitiful and also somewhat fearful. She held the head of the young Wali, and finally disappeared in the ruins of the king's city. At this moment, a beam of light fell on old Tang's body. He also disappeared with this beam of light. Almost half of Moses' body was buried in the soil. At this time, someone was trying to pull him out of the soil with all their strength. After a few tugs, Mose finally opened his eyes slowly. You're awake. Mose heard the voice and looked at the person in front of him who was trying to pull him out. Lillian, why are you here? Moses' face was full of doubts. Didn't I tell you to stay in the cellar and wait for me to come back? Lillian fiercely slapped Moses' head at this time and said fiercely, You idiot! You used such a big stone to block the cellar. There was no food or drink in there. If you didn't come back, I could only starve to death in there. But you're out now. Mose was shocked. How did you come out? You really don't remember anything? Lillian looked at Moses' eyes at this time. Mose pondered for a moment, and then suddenly shouted, Damn it! I'm going to beat up the bastard who touched my mother. My mother said that men can't touch women casually. If they touch, they have to take responsibility. If that bastard takes responsibility, I'll have a cheap father. No, I, Mose, am an indomitable spirit. How can I call a bastard father? Lillian, use more strength. I'm almost out. After you help me out, I'll beat that guy to death, and then I'll take you home to sleep. I'm awesome. My mother said that we must sleep before a big battle. We didn't have time to sleep before, so we have to make up for it. You, why don't you go to hell? The blushing female knight slapped Moses' cheek, stomped her foot, and turned away angrily. Hey, Lillian, where are you going? You haven't helped me out yet. I can't go up or down like this. It's uncomfortable, Mose hurriedly said. I'm really uncomfortable. Lillian had already run far away and didn't look back. Mose scratched his head and looked around blankly. Where am I? Sang air. At this moment, An extremely familiar voice rang in Mo Sang's ears. It was the voice of Gong Sun Eunyoung. Mother, mother, where are you? Sang Air, I'm going to a place far away. Take good care of yourself in the future. Mother, where are you going? When will you come back? Mother, don't worry. I'll take good care of myself. I have 2 wives at home. They'll take good care of me. Don't worry. By the way, Mother, when I come out, I'll help you beat that bastard to death. Mother, wait for me. I'm coming out. Mose shouted wildly and used all his strength. Finally, he crawled out of the mud little by little. He was covered in mud, but he was very excited. Mother, do you see me? I'm out. Mother, where are you? Mother, you want to play hide and seek with me, right? I'll find you soon. Huh? Mose began to lift up the surrounding rocks in high spirits and seriously searched everything around him. A white beam of light disappeared behind him. Mother, don't leave Sang Air alone. The sound of footsteps rang out behind him. Boss Luo. Jillian didn't look back. He just sat on the ground silently, looking up at a crystal pillar in front of him. The Highland Saint was sealed in it, and her smile was still clear. It's strange, Jillian said in a low voice. I seem to be able to accept the experience during this period. How do you feel after you accept it? Like a friend, the person behind him walked to Jillian's side, looking down at him. Feeling, Jillian raised his head and thought for a while. In fact, I don't have any idea. To be honest, it's like, even if the sky falls, I can use it as a quilt to cover it. He shook his head. I don't know. Think about it slowly. There should be enough time for you to figure it out. Yes, I will. Jillian nodded, looking at the mysterious young man in front of him. From the beginning, when he helped him pick up the kitchen knife made by his father, it seemed to be the beginning of the story. A wonderful, magnificent, and sudden mythical story. May I know who you are, Mr. Luo? Jillian asked expectantly. A traveler. Jillian was startled and suddenly said, I have a feeling that you are leaving, right? Almost. Boss Luo nodded. The journey will come to an end after all. Can we meet again in the future? Jillian asked curiously. Boss Luo smiled and suddenly reached out his hand, pointing at Jillian's chest. Jillian was startled and subconsciously looked down, only to see a soft, white light flashing in front of his chest. He quickly reached out and took out a necklace made of string. The necklace was connected to a pendant. This was a gift from Uncle Zayart, the king of Yamos, before all of this had happened. This is, Boss Luo said indifferently. This world hides an artifact called Mountain River Map. This is the last thing that can help you find it. Mountain River Map. Jillian couldn't help but fall in a deep thought. You want me to find it? It's just a suggestion. Boss Luo smiled at this time. If you want to be an excellent adventurer, you may as well give yourself a goal. Huh? Jillian shook his head. That is to say, there is no chance to meet again. No. Boss Luo suddenly said at this time. One day, when you can know another name that also belongs to you, we may meet again. Another name that also belongs to me? Jillian couldn't help opening his mouth. What do you mean? What name? In his eyes, Boss Luo's figure gradually faded away. Jillian looked at this scene in surprise, but soon he felt relieved. In the end, he suddenly heard Mr. Luo's last words. That name is Mo Xiaofei. When Jillian returned to the ruins of the palace, he saw peace between man and nature sitting motionlessly on the ground. Before he left, peace between man and nature seemed to be sitting like this, sitting beside the kingdom's sword saint. The kingdom's sword saint who had passed away. Only Tianyan Xin was here to accompany him. Jillian finally came forward, stretching out his hand and patting peace between man and nature's shoulder gently. Peace between man and nature turned his head. Jillian said, I say, are you still going to take me to the Highland? Peace between man and nature opened his mouth. Behind Jillian, many people who had survived the disaster walked out one after another without anyone noticing. They had gathered together naturally. Where there were people, there would be more and more people. Let's go to rebuild the Highland. Peace between man and nature finally showed a beautiful smile, and we won. Chapter 1900. Data reloading. Removing divine creature plugin. Human creativity benchmark increased by 5%. Magic creature reproduction rate increased by 10% at the World Summit. In this atmosphere that overlooked the entire world and allowed the ground to be seen with the naked eye, the white-clothed Alea was holding a sphere of blue light in her hands. His eyes, which were like electronic eyes, flashed with various streams of data. You just got back the management rights of this world, and you're already working. Don't you want to take a break? The white-clothed Araya welcomed someone who could interrupt her work at will. She could only stop what she was doing temporarily, because in her understanding, responding to the person in front of her was the top priority. No matter how unreasonable the reason was, she had to respond as soon as possible. What can I do for you? Root authority holder. Boss Luo tilted his head slightly and looked at her. He smiled and said, I'm going to leave here soon, but I've set up a door here. When I come again, will you welcome me? Door. The critical door, used to travel between subworlds. It was like the back door of the program. It could make it convenient for Boss to enter the world of any subsystem of the entire Araya system. The white-clothed Araya seemed to be in deep thought, and then gave such an answer. The root manager can be set up for me to make it convenient for me to welcome the root manager in a reasonable way. A reasonable way. Boss Luo was a little dumbfounded. If he could set up such a beautiful girl at will, would it be something to be happy about? How do you plan to rebuild this world? Boss Luo asked another question. Alea in white quickly replied, This is supposed to be the 7th reboot. However, the 7th reboot is not yet complete. I intend to fix the wrong parameters this time. For the time being, let's set this reboot as version 6. 5. There should be more details to be updated in the future. I need some time to do some calculations. Sounds like a lot of work. I've been working all the time. You've been working all the time. Boss Luo stepped forward and patted the white-clothed Araya's head. Thank you for your hard work. Well, I'm about to leave. I'll come back to see you when I have time. Candy, The promised candy. That, later, Boss Luo and the other servants left the chessboard world with a white beam of light. The white-clothed Alea once again picked up the blue ball in front of her and continued her reconstruction work. However, there was a small white rabbit creamy candy beside her. Like a satellite, it slowly revolved around the ball. Their bodies didn't really come to the world of the chessboard and then undergo reconstruction. Their bodies had been stored in a space similar to a mezzanine. The servant's body was completely another body, and it was just a projection of consciousness. However, when the servant left, it would automatically conduct a check. If the servant's ability was higher, the original body would be covered. But that was the ability of the mountain river diagram. The subworlds couldn't interfere with each other. Therefore, after the core of the mountain river diagram was completely broken, this ability seemed to have been terminated. In the banquet hall of the castle, the servant cards placed on a huge chessboard disappeared in an instant, and then a few white lights appeared, and then the winners of the chessboard game finally returned to the world where they were originally in. They appeared almost at the same time, and the originally cold and cheerless banquet hall instantly became a little more lively. When Boss Luo opened his eyes, the servant girl's smile instantly entered his sight. As if she had been prepared to be in the first line of sight, the servant girl gently lifted her skirt. You're back. Did you have a good trip? That was a greeting without any flaws. It was a good experience. Boss Luo smiled slightly and immediately added, I think if there's a chance next time, I should take you with me. I miss you as black tea and delicious food. They looked at each other as if there was no one else around. Nan Xiaonan felt that these two guys were so dazzling. What was going on? But compared to these two flash bombs, she was more concerned about the situation in the banquet hall of the castle. The situation here seemed to be quite strange. The surrounding looked like it had been burned by fire. There were a lot of grayish-black ashes on the ground. But what was more obvious was the two severely burned guys lying on the ground. According to the remaining clothing, it could be vaguely recognized that they were the twin maid's elder sister, Tiff, and Miss Gonglina from one of the 13 vampire clans. Even at this time, Miss Gonglina's body was being eaten by an old black dog. It seemed to be the black dog that Sneeve had been feeding. Besides, Tang Tianlin came back. At this moment, he was obviously in a state of confusion and nervousness. There were also Dr. Gores and Tina. Finally, there was Gong Sun Earnyang. She was standing alone by the window of the banquet hall. Her back was facing everyone, and she looked at the heavy rain outside the window with a worried look. Sister, Tina, the twin maid, recognized one of the burnt ones on the ground at once. It was her sister. She rushed to her immediately. At this time, Dr. Gores quietly fixed his eyes on all the people in the banquet hall, but his footsteps were moving back little by little, little by little. Mr. Gores, where are you going? Are you going to open a bottle of champagne to celebrate your return? Just when the family doctor of the castle was about to retreat to the side door of the banquet hall, Nin Xiaonan's voice suddenly sounded behind him. This made Dr. Gores feel as if he had fallen into a huge abyss of crisis. He suddenly attracted everyone's attention, including Tina, who was checking on Tiff's injuries. Doctor, come and help me check on my sister. I beg you. Okay, I'm coming. Dr. Gores could only brace himself. Under everyone's gaze, he quickly walked to Tina's side, squatted down, and began to check Tiff's injuries absent-mindedly. Oh, how could she be injured so badly? This can't be cured. It's very difficult to cure. Let me think about it. I need to send her to my treatment room immediately. Yes, Tiff needs treatment now. As a doctor, at this moment, my doctor's soul is burning. As he spoke loudly, Dr. Gores directly carried the seriously injured Tiff and said seriously, "Nothing is more important than saving a life. If there's anything else, we'll talk about it later. Don't hinder me from performing my sacred duty as a doctor." At this time, Dr. Gores's face was full of compassion. After carrying Tiff, he rushed out of the banquet hall without looking back. Tina hesitated and looked around. She gritted her teeth and followed him directly. This is a talent. Nan Xiaonan rubbed her chin at this time and said seriously. She shook her head, knowing that these two guys couldn't make any waves even if they were here. After all, they were just poor guys who were enslaved by Wally. Now that the owner of the castle, Wally, couldn't get out of the chessboard, it meant that everything in the castle would fall apart. Chessboard. Thinking of the chessboard, Nan Xiaonan instantly looked at the chessboard placed on the table. At this time, the whole chessboard had become dim and was even completely petrified. Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but touch the petrified chessboard. She felt her heart ache. This was a treasure that could devour a subworld, or even refine a subworld. It's destroyed just like that. This thing is rare, even in the void. This is just something like a teleportation device. The real Mountain River map is still in the world we've been to. Boss Luo waved his hand, and the petrified chessboard rose automatically without any wind. It was shrinking little by little. At its heaviest, it shrank to the size of a palm and fell into Boss Luo's palm. The chessboard closed up and finally became a small box. Then, under Nin Xiaonan's envious gaze, Boss Luo handed the chessboard box to Miss Maid. Right at this moment, a scream rang out. After the scream, it was followed by angry curses. You bastard! How dare you? How dare you swallow my body? Unforgivable! It was the voice of Miss Gonglina. Vampires usually had remarkable self-healing abilities. Vampires who were powerful enough could be reborn even if only their hearts were left. As the heir of one of the 13 noble families and a pure-blood noble, Miss Gonglina had undoubtedly reached the stage where she could be reborn with her heart. Even so, when she woke up from her serious injuries, she saw that half of her thighs had been bitten off by a lowly black dog. Miss Gonglina still couldn't accept it. How many pure-blood nobles in the inhuman realm were willing to spend a lot of money just to be trampled on by her beautiful legs? For this pair of perfect legs, she even bought a huge amount of insurance from the insurance department of the Magician Association. The management of her beautiful legs was even stricter. Miss Gonglina, who had just woken up, was so angry that she directly slapped Black Dragon and Black Hound away. Black Dragon and Black Hound didn't even have time to scream before they crashed into the wall. But at this moment, Miss Maid waved her hand, and the window curtains of the banquet hall flew out instantly and caught Black Dragon before it crashed into the wall. Even so, Black Dragon, and Black Hound still fainted. Miss Gong Lina's body was burned black. She sat on the ground and was much more clear-headed now. What happened before she fainted flashed in her mind quickly. At the same time, Miss Gong Lina's face became more and more panicked. That annoying woman. That damn woman. That horrible woman. Looking at Miss Maid, who was smiling at her, Gong Lina instantly shivered. The degree of fear even overshadowed the pain caused by her injuries. It seems that a lot of things have happened here. Boss Luo suddenly said after looking around. Something has happened, Miss Maid said lightly, like a dragonfly touching the surface of the water. Nan Xiaonan's eyes widened in an instant. So much? Moreover, Mr. Luo seemed to accept this explanation. Is this really the future boss's wife? I'm the heir of the Tsimish family. At this moment, Miss Gong Lina's unsteady voice interrupted Nan Xiaonan's guess about whether Miss Maid was the boss's wife or not. She subconsciously looked over and saw Gong Lina's lips were trembling. I'm the eldest daughter of the Tsimish family. If you deal with me here, it will be very troublesome. Nan Xiaonan furrowed her brows. Could it be that this so-called eldest daughter of the Tsimish family still intended to bluff at this time? But this appearance of hers didn't have any deterrence at all. What kind of trouble? Miss Maid said directly without expression. It was like a nightmare that she couldn't get rid of the pain when she was burned by the black flame. At this time, Gong Lina was completely nervous and her brain turned quickly. No matter what, dealing with the heir of the 13 clans is equivalent to going against the entire clan. Of course, you won't care. But if you have to be harassed by the clan all the time, it will be very uncomfortable. This is not a threat. I just want to say that we don't need to be hostile. I can give you the chessboard, and I can also guarantee that the Tsimish family will not trouble you in the future. What happened in Wally Castle tonight is only known to the people who participated tonight. Sounds like a very good suggestion. Miss Maid said indifferently, but then she gently walked to Boss Luo's side. Behind him, the position of half a step. Unfortunately, it's not me who makes the decision. Learn from her. Nan Xiaonan, you should learn from her. This woman is too king scary. Nan Xiaonan stared at Miss Maid's every move as if she was a celestial being. This beauty with long blonde hair was tightly wrapped. But when she stood in this position, which man didn't love her? I can give you the wealth of the Tsimish family, convenient, friendship, eternal friendship, as if she had caught a life-saving straw. The eldest daughter of the Tsimish family quickly looked at Boss Luo. The 13 clans have a long history, and they have a great influence in the modern world and the inhuman domain. Miss Gong Lina, if you can, I hope you can answer some of my questions. Boss Luo said indifferently. I won't stop you from leaving. What? What questions? Gong Lina quickly said. Chessboard. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, I heard that this chessboard was given to Mr. Varley by you. So this chessboard, where did Miss Gong Lina get it? Miss Gong Lina was stunned and started to mumble. This question, she probably can't answer it herself. At this time, Gong's son Ernyang, who was standing alone at the edge of the window, suddenly said, Let me answer your question. As the first follower of chessboard, I think no one knows it better than me. As she spoke, Gong's son Ernyang slowly turned around. Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but open her mouth and stare at Gong's son Ernyang. She didn't look like the wrinkled old woman in the world of chessboard. Although she wasn't young, she definitely wasn't old. She looked like she was in her early 20s. And she looked good. Is it strange? Gong's son Ernyang looked at everyone indifferently. In the chessboard, it's the body of a follower. This is my original appearance. Tang Tianlin suddenly fell in a deep thought, but the moment he met the eyes of Gong's son Ernyang, he suddenly felt like there was a dagger at his back. The air seemed to be completely frozen, and he felt like there were thousands of sharp swords around him.